The meeting of the Committee on Homeland Security, Justice and Public Safety is hereby called to order. Good morning to the people of the territory. Before we begin, I'd like to take this opportunity to take a moment of silence for Ms. Stacy Shang, who lost her life on the island of St. Croix when a stray bullet entered her home, killing her instantly, and also for Anais Cruz, the mother of baby Logan, the 2-year-old who lost his battle with childhood cancer leukemia. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. The Logan Miracle Foundation was created in memory of the superhero baby Logan to bring awareness to childhood cancer, and I urge everyone within the sound of my voice to please support this most worthy and relevant foundation. Also, condolences go out to Melissa Charles from the Media Department at St. Croix on the loss of her brother, Francis Gustave. Condolences also go out to Ms. Sonia Andrews, the Chief of Staff for Senator Carly Young, who lost her mother. Condolences also go out to Senators Johnson, Legislative Assistant Constancia Emangs Hodge, on the loss of her mother as well. Condolences also go out to Senator Carly Young on the loss of his uncle. Heartfelt condolences go out to the family of O'Neill Molina, the former chief at the Port Authority. Condolences also go out to the family of Elroy Pico Pickering, who was a retired firefighter and my neighbor ever since I was a child growing up in Estate Bavoni. I mean, it was like a Bavoni custom that when you enter our neighborhood, as you drove past Pico's house, you had to either blow your horn or whistle and shout out, "Hey, Pico!" A Bavoni tradition that will dearly be missed. Also, condolences go out to the Harrigan family on the loss of Wang Harrigan. He was one of my childhood friends and a fellow trumpet player who played music with me for many, many years. Wang Harrigan, who I gave the nickname Big Chief, was small in stature, but had a heart of the size of a mountain. We also taught together at Adida School. He was also the band conductor for the National Guard for many, many years. Big Chief, bro, play on in eternal peace until we meet again. You have my word. I'll keep the trumpet polished for you, my friend. Let's also keep the family of those who lost their loved ones within the past 2 weeks due to COVID in our prayers. I believe we lost about 8 or 9 persons from COVID in the past 2 weeks. I'm going to do things a little different this morning and ask my researcher, Mr. Brown, who's an ordained pastor at the AME Church, to pray over us this morning. I feel that this year is a year that we can use as much prayer warriors as possible to take us through these trying times. Mr. Brown?
Let every heart pray. Father, we stretch our hands to thee. No other help we know. If you withdraw yourself from us, where shall we go? God, with the cloud of death that seems to be hovering over our territory, whether it is through the coronavirus, whether it is through gun violence, whether it is through domestic violence, God, we need to feel you in a special way. We need you to remind us that of who we are and whose we are. We need you to break into this body and help them deliberate over policy and practices such that folks will understand in every corner of our territory that violence is unacceptable. Unacceptable. That we are a proud people. That we are a precious people. That we are worthy and priceless in your sight. And so help us, God, as an institution, to find ways to communicate a message to each other that we're better than this. God, this week, blood has been shed in so many different ways, and our hearts are heavy. But you reminded us in your word that in the last days there will be times of difficulty. People will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. But God, show us a more excellent way today. Help this body deliberate in such a way that we send the message that this is not who we are, that this is a spirit, an evil spirit that is trying to tear us down. And at the same time, Lord God, help us to not see those who have been caught up as enemies, but as future kings and queens that just need to be loved, that need to be reminded of the three queens that we honored yesterday from Firebird, that need to be reminded of the Eudora Ken student who marched with 1,200 other students down to this body and helped raise enough money to have a gym. Help us to remind ourselves that we can do better, even with less, that you still arm us with weapons that allow us to do that which we could never imagine. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen, amen, amen. Thank you, Mr. Brown. After that, the committee will take a brief 2-minute recess. The committee is back from recess. Yes. Good morning. Guten Morgen to everyone within the sound of my voice. I'm feeling a lot better now after that powerful prayer by our pastor, Pastor Brown. This is TGIF, and it's a beautiful sunny day here in these beautiful Virgin Islands. This is the first meeting of the year for the Committee on Homeland Security, Public Safety, and Justice, so I want to wish everyone within the sound of my voice a happy and a prosperous new year. This committee has decided that since it's a brand new year, we'll do things in our power to start with a clean slate and be productive and informative at our committee meetings. Everything about the Virgin Islands is not doom and gloom, so we'll do our part to showcase the positivity. I want to recognize that most of the time, we tend to forget or overlook this institution's most precious commodity, which is the employees of Central Staff. Happy Friday, Central Staff. And as your Senator at Large, I decree today, January 28, 2022, as a legislature's Central Staff Employee Day. My office has decided to treat an employee from the St. Thomas St. John District and an employee from the St. Croix District to lunch. Here, in my hand, I have 2 envelopes with $100 in each one. All you have to do to win is answer a simple riddle and text the answer to 340-474-9104. Once again, that's 340-474-9104. Text the answer and your name, and the first correct answer in each district wins. I can see all of you guys and ladies now glued to your monitors in your offices right about now. Okay, here goes. There are 30 cows in a field, 28 chickens. How many didn't? Once again, there are 30 cows in a field, 28 chickens. How many didn't? Just text your answer to 340-474-9104, and 2 of you will be the lucky winners. I'll repeat it throughout the hearing today until we have a lucky winner. Then the next time, maybe we'll do it for the viewing audience. Resilient, able to adapt well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress, such as family and relationship problems, serious health problems, or workplace and financial stressors. If that does not define Virgin Islanders, then I don't know what does. How many hurricanes and storms and floods have we been through? And now on top of that, a pandemic too, that we are still navigating our way through. Most other places would have just folded up and possibly collapsed, but not the VI, as we are a different type of strong. We are VI strong, and when situations blow us down or rock our boats, it's only temporary, as we are quick to regain our composure and build back better together always. And in times of need, we come together and work through our differences on behalf of this precious place that we call home. One recent example of this is, take a look, media.
See how the people are coming out and doing this work here. And there's a lot more work going through this whole week. But this thing is moving perfect. People from east, west, north, and south is down here in Frederick said putting this park together. Our children is going to have one of the most beautiful parks in the territory.
Right. And the community coming out to assist.
Assist,
you know
yes.
what I mean? Even on a Sunday and stuff. They're making, we're passing laws and stuff, making right and listening during the week. But on the weekend, come back to the community.
Yeah.
This is just as important. Take a pan around and see all the different child groups and stuff that here participating with us today.
We got LEPC out here. I don't know what group we have over there, but we got LEPC, the big group right back of us. Hit the LEPC. Yeah, hit the LEPC group right back of us, please, right there.
Okay, you got LEPC right here in the house.
LEPC out here, they got the kids and
Yeah,
turn them out
cool.
here. They're out here doing a big set of work here.
On behalf of the community, man.
You name it, we got Gentlemen of Jones out here, we got Air National Guard out here,
Yeah.
we got the 40 plus out here, we got everybody in the community. This workers up there handling her business, everybody get There are 3 meal service, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And everything is taken care of. So come on out, be a part of making this thing
We all
happen.
over here. We're gonna do it for the full week.
The whole week.
We're gonna do hours of Friday. This one hours of Friday. So if you have some time, this is the hour 20 years to do. Come on, go back to the community. It's for our children. Most important commodity we have. Yeah, we here today. You know, parents, we have art and celebrities and house people coming out and giving them their time, giving back to the community. We have Eric. I'm sitting here back on our Spoonie, the future, lightweight champ of the world. They're now representing the VA in a big way. Talk to the people, let people know the model.
Yeah, I'm out here with Senator Stephen Payne, you know, giving back to the community. Ever since moving to St. Croix, I received a lot, especially through my boxing career, you know. So I keep striving for greatness, keep trying to give back and, you know, and just make things happen the best way I can.
Thanks so much for your support, brother, man. One love, all right? Blessings for life. Blessings for life. All right, brother. Easy.
Fathers in the community, St. Croix, stand up. We out here, we helping out. We're Kid First. We're doing the park in Mildred Common Park. We're helping out. We're out here, you know, it's a big thing for our community. And we're asking that the families of St. Croix respect the park after it's done. It's a lot of hard work going into this park for the betterment of our kids and our communities, for our children, for the future. So respect it, take care of it, and treat it good. They're out here with a big pain. They're out here with my guys, them for fathers in the community. And we're doing this for the team. We're doing it for St. Croix. St. Croix, stand up. Stand up.
Buenas tardes, estamos aquí en el pueblo de Frederick con el senador Stephen Payne, aquí en el parque de Frederick, que están renovando. Estamos aquí de voluntarios, dando 2 o 3 horas, haciéndolo de corazón. Le pedimos al pueblo de Santa Cruz que también venga y apoye 2 o 3 horas de voluntario. Gracias.
Yes, the Media Commons Park and St. Croix brought us all together for one primary cause, our children. The members of the Committee on Homeland Security, Justice and Public Safety are Senator Stephen D. Payne Sr., Senator Dwayne M. DeGraff, Vice Chair, Senator Kenneth L. Giddens, Senator Novel E. Francis Jr., Senator Javon E. James Sr., Senator Alma Francis Heiliger, and Senator Franklin D. Johnson. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Senator Stephen D. Payne Sr.,
Present.
Senator Stephen D. Payne Sr., present. Senator Dwayne M. DeGraff. Senator DeGraff, present. Senator Kenneth L. Gittens. Senator Gittens, absent. Senator Novel E. Francis Jr.
Here.
Senator Francis, present. Senator Javon E. James Sr.
Present.
Senator James Sr., present. Senator Alma Francis Heiliger. Senator Francis Heiliger, present. Senator Franklin D. Johnson. Senator Johnson, absent.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, we have a total of 5 present and 2 absent.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do you have any correspondences to be read onto the record?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Please proceed.
Excuse me.
The Honorable Stephen D. Payne Sr., Chairman, Committee on Homeland Security, Justice, and Public Safety. Dear Senator Payne, please excuse my absence at the Committee on Homeland Security, Justice, and Public Safety hearing scheduled for January 28 due to a death in my family. Thank you in advance for your understanding. Sincerely, Kenneth L. Gittens, Senator. The Honorable Senator Stephen D. Payne Sr., Dear Mr. Chair, please be advised that I will be late in attending today, Friday, January 28, 2022, Committee on Homeland Security, Justice, and Public Safety meeting scheduled to begin at 10 a.m. in the Earl B. Otley Legislative Chambers. As I attend Mr. Cruz Santana Sr.'s funeral, one of my very good friends and ex-colleagues of the Bureau of Corrections and Almeric L. Christian Federal Building and Courthouse. My sincere apologies for any inconvenience my delayed arrival may cause. Sincerely, Franklin D. Johnson, Senator. Mr. Chair, that concludes the reading.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Please record Senator Gittens as excused and Senator Franklin Johnson as tardy. And give me the count again, please.
We have 6 present and 1 excuse. Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Please read the items on the agenda.
The Committee on Homeland Security, Justice, and Public Safety will consider Bill Number 34-0141, an act amending Title 34 Virgin Islands Code, Chapter 8, to require the Virgin Islands Attorney General's Office to expeditiously notify victims of crimes against a person of the release of their alleged perpetrator. Sponsored by Senator Donna Fred Gregory. Invited testifiers are the Honorable Denise George, Attorney General, Department of Justice, Ms. Clemma Lewis, Director, St. Croix Women's Coalition, Ms. Winnie Testamark, Director, Bureau of Corrections, and Ms. Anya Stewart, Director, Family Resource Center. Removal of Bill 34-0142, sponsored, testifiers are unable to attend. Will be heard on the agenda for February 28, 2022. That concludes the reading of the agenda, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Good morning to the testifiers. Good morning, Honorable Denise George. Good morning. We're going to quickly do a sound check quick to make sure everyone's mics are working. Starting with you, Attorney General. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Okay, can we have a little more volume on the audio, please? And on this end?
You want me to say it again? Oh.
No, that was for media. Is there anyone else with you on your team today? Attorney General?
Yes, also with me is the criminal chief for St. Croix, and that is Attorney Amy Simpson.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Ms. Simpson.
And also Elma Brathwaite. She is the Director of Victim Services of the Department of Justice.
Elma Brathwaite.
You have to put your mute. Yeah.
Ms. Brathwaite?
She's on mute. I can't hear it.
Ms. Brathwaite, we can't hear you. Your mic is on?
Can't hear you.
Media, she says her mic is on, but we're not hearing her.
She is remote. She's actually in the States. So check the volume on your phone that you're coming in on. Is that, because we can't hear you at all. Put in a call to
Ms. Brad, please go ahead and Ms. Brad, go ahead and sign off and then sign back in. Okay? I'm gonna get back to you as soon as you sign again. That's the last person for your team?
Yes.
Okay. I see. Mr. Hanson, how are you? You're representing the Bureau this morning?
Yes, I'm here with Mr. Kaiser Carlwood. I'll be reading the testimony for Director Testamark today.
Okay, so you'll be reading it or Mr. Carlwood?
Mr. Carlwood will be reading it.
Okay. And his position is with the Bureau?
He is now the acting PIO.
Okay, acting PIO. Good morning, Mr. Carlwood.
Good morning, Senator. You can hear me well?
Try one more time.
Good morning, Senator. You can hear me well? Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me well? Good morning.
Yes, we're hearing you this time. Thank you. And Miss Clemma Lewis, you're online?
Yes. Good morning.
Miss Lewis, could you please turn your camera, because we're not seeing your face. Turn your camera towards you, because we're not seeing your face. Okay, good morning.
Is that any better?
Yes, ma'am, that's much better. Good morning, how are you, my dear?
I'm fine. Good morning to everyone.
Okay, is there anyone else with you today from your team? Or your solo?
No, just me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Miss Anya Stewart?
Good morning, everyone.
Mrs. Stewart, one more time, please.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Okay, at this time, we have Attorney General. You can begin with your. Oh, my bad. Who speaks to this bill? Senator. I apologize. Recognize the presence of our Senate President, Madam President, Donna Fred Gregory. Blessed good morning. Blessed good morning. You're recognized at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I really want to thank your researcher for his prayers this morning, because God knows the Virgin Islands need as much prayer as possible. And I think we need to continue to pray, not only when we have these situations, but we need to stay prayed up. I want to thank the Office of the Attorney General, the Bureau of Corrections, and all of the other testifiers, as well as Ms. Clemma Lewis and Anya Stewart, for being here this morning. I have been working on this legislation for well over 2 years actually. And this legislation was actually brought to my attention by a young woman that previously worked in my office, Amber Lewis. And I always believe that it's important to give credit where credit is due. This legislation seeks to expand the notification to victims, and it requires that victims are notified when the perpetrators or alleged perpetrator is released back into the community. Bill number 34-0141 seeks to protect victims and defines crimes against the person as criminal offenses which involve bodily harm, such as assault, battery, kidnapping, and rape. And it requires notification of those notification of the victims or to the victims. This definition expands the notification beyond domestic violence as currently in the law. So one would argue, Why are we having this discussion when there is already a notification component in the law? But the law basically speaks only to domestic violence. And we all know of all of the criminal activities and all of the crimes that we are seeing here in our community. And we recognize that there are persons in our community who have been victims of assault and battery, rape, who are not in a domestic violence, where the situation was not related rather to domestic violence. And while we have a Victims and Witness Bill of Rights under Title 34, Chapter 8, that Bill of Rights does not delineate the process of notification. It does not ensure accountability to victims when a person who have violated them is released back into the community. And the current Bill of Rights basically says, a victim of prosecution witness has a right to be informed of a defendant's release on bail. A victim or prosecution witness has a right to be informed of post-sentence hearing affecting the probation or parole of the officer. A victim or prosecution witness has a right to be informed when the conviction offender receives a temporary, provisional, or final release from custody, or the offender escapes from custody. So it speaks to rights, but it doesn't speak to action or the requirements of the government entity to ensure that action is in fact taking place. So colleagues, the proposed legislation expands these rights. The proposed legislation requires that victims shall be notified by phone, email, or by a person duly authorized to deliver a summons when the perpetrator is being released from jail, a mental health institution, or has escaped from custody. It also advises them of where the perpetrator is being released, because we have inmates abroad, and that is also very important to victims. The enactment of this legislation requires collaboration between the Department of Justice and the Bureau of Corrections. Colleagues, community, testifiers, this proposed legislation is extremely impactful. We can all see what is happening in our community, as I mentioned earlier. And there is no doubt that we have challenges. Victims of crimes in our community must feel safe. And this proposed measure allows for victims to prepare themselves mentally, emotionally, and in some cases, physically, to prepare for the impending release of the alleged or the perpetrator. This measure offers victims a level of protection that they've been asking for many, many years, but legally the government could not provide. Can you imagine walking into the grocery store and coming face to face with someone who has violated you, and you were completely unaware that that individual was no longer incarcerated? This happens in our community, and it continues to happen. And as a result, victims of crimes are often re-victimized because of these types of situations. This proposed measure will allow victims to participate in the judicial process with the knowledge that after they have spoken up and out, and the person that they have spoken against is released, that they will be so advised and not have to find out about the release walking down the street or in the aisle of a grocery store. It is in fact that people who have been a victim of assault, domestic violence, rape, and other criminal offenses that involve bodily harm often suffer with physical, emotional, and mental health issues due to these offenses. Studies suggest that being a victim of crime of this nature is directly correlated with depression and suicidal behavior. Our responsibility as Virgin Islanders and as leaders in this territory is to give victims of crime a layer of comfort and protection so that they report the crimes being committed against them and others, so that they are comfortable, so that they are assured that they will be safe. Additionally, not only will the bill protect victims, but this protection offered to victims establishes a sense of safety that encourages victims to cooperate in the judicial process. There's no doubt that our legal system depends on involvement and cooperation of victims of crimes. Expanding victim notification aligns the Virgin Islands with 41 other states that currently have a notification system beyond domestic violence. And that quote came from the Council of State Government and American Probation and Parole Association. Colleagues and testifiers, at the appropriate time, I will be bringing an amendment addressing the concerns of the Department of Justice, that the Department of Justice, via the Attorney General and her team, shared that the notification will be the responsibility of the Bureau of Corrections. Colleagues, this morning I ask for your support on Bill number 34-0141. Your support, as I'm sure that all of you know, I believe that the majority of, if not all, I think with the exception of the female colleague, have touched law enforcement in one way or the other in this territory. So I believe that you understand what I'm trying to do here, and I'm asking you for your support as we discuss this measure, as we deliberate on this measure. It is my fervent hope that we will be able to move this legislation forward today. Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time.
Thank you, Madam President, for that eloquent and very thorough review of your bill. Attorney General, you may proceed with your testimony.
Yes. Good morning, Chairman Payne, senators, legislative staff, fellow testifiers, and those of you listening and viewing. My name is Denise N. George, and I am the Virgin Islands Attorney General. With me today are Assistant Attorney General Amy Simpson, Chief of the Criminal Division of St. Croix, as well as Elma Brathwaite, the Director of the DOJ Victim Services Unit. Let me say first that I did receive an amendment this morning that addresses some of the issues that I raised, and I'm going to be raising in this testimony, but I would read the testimony thoroughly anyway, and then we can, the changes will be made later. I am indeed honored to have been invited to give remarks on Bill number 34-0141. The purpose of this measure is to amend Title 34, Virgin Islands Code, Chapter 8, to require the Virgin Islands Attorney General's Office to expeditiously notify victims of certain crimes of the release or impending release of their perpetrator. I applaud Senator Gregory's intent behind introducing this proposed legislation, because notifying victims of the release from prison of the ones who have hurt them is essential to assuring and maintaining the safety and security of crime victims in our community. The Department of Justice remains fully committed to protecting victims and witnesses of violent crimes. However, I cannot support this bill in its current form for several reasons, which I've outlined in the past. I would now like to reiterate those points. First, the mandate on the DOJ to notify victims of the releases is misplaced. The DOJ does not have the knowledge of or access to any information regarding the release of inmates from the Bureau of Corrections. That is fully under the jurisdiction and control of the BOC, which is the most appropriate agency to assure the prompt and advanced notification that this proposed measure requires. Although desirable, DOJ does not have any link or access to that information to carry out such a mandate. Additionally, the Virgin Islands Code already mandates victim notification on the government institutions that are in the best position to provide it. For example, Title V BIC Section 4606 B-C, B through C places the following requirements on the parole board. It says, unless waived by the victim, the territorial parole board shall, with at least 30 days prior notice, advise the victim of the following. 1, that an inmate is being considered for parole. 2, the date of the parole hearing. And 3, the victim's right to submit documents to and provide testimony before the board at the hearing. And C, the territorial parole board shall notify the victim at least 24 hours prior to an inmate being paroled. Second, regarding the notification of alleged victims of suspected perpetrators' pre-conviction release, the responsibility has been placed on the courts ordering the release for several of the crimes addressed in today's measure. For example, the duties of the court in criminal actions of domestic violence, which includes rape and unlawful sexual contact, state when a defendant charged with a crime or offense involving domestic violence is released from custody before trial on bail or personal recognizance, the clerk of the court or other person designated by the court shall provide a copy of this order to the victim forthwith. Third, while this proposed measure assigns responsibility for victim notification to the DOJ, it contradicts Section 203C of the Virgin Islands Code, which already places that same responsibility squarely on the Bureau of Corrections. Section 203, subsection C, says that subsection C6 and 7 of this section are the responsibility of the Bureau of Corrections. C6 and 7 state, a victim or prosecution witness which has a right to be informed of post-sentence hearings affecting the probation or parole of an offender. And 7, a victim or prosecution witness has the right to be informed when the convicted offender receives a temporary, provisional, or final release from custody, or the offender escapes from custody. In other words, the courts and the BOC have already been tasked with the notification requirements, and today's proposed measure complicates matters by making multiple agencies, departments, and branches of government equally responsible for the same tasks, which can appear wasteful and redundant. An effective process of notification needs to be as streamlined as possible, connecting the information from the agency that has the information to the agencies and persons who need to get it seamlessly. Taking a look at Section 1, subsection 2E of proposed measure, it states that the DOJ, in conjunction with the Bureau of Corrections, when applicable, shall notify a victim when a person is released on personal recognizance or is released from a medical or mental health institution, escaped from custody, or have completed their term of incarceration. Regarding the first circumstance, as discussed earlier, when someone is released on bail or their own recognizance, the courts are already statutorily mandated to make the notifications. And regarding the latter two, as I've been saying all along, it will always be necessary for the DOJ to work in conjunction with the BOC, but the onus for the release notification has to be placed on the BOC, because the DOJ will have no idea if someone escapes from BOC custody or when the offender has completed their term of incarceration. Further, as it is written, this measure requires manpower that DOJ does not have to perform the responsibilities placed on it. This includes the 4-month deadline to establish and promulgate rules and regulations to carry out the mandate by an already overburdened legal staff, Also, the 30-day advance notice requirement to potentially hundreds of crime victims by the DOJ Victim Services Unit, which is now a unit of one and is now wholly unattainable. Efforts to fund criminal victim advocate positions in the DOJ proposed 2022 budget were denied by this body. So currently, we have one director on St. Thomas and no victim advocate on St. Croix. Regardless of whether today's contemplated legislation is passed as is or amended, the fact remains that the DOJ still requires these critical positions to create a fully functioning victim services unit. And finally, Section 1B of the measure requires the use of several methods of notification as applicable, yet requires all methods to be used by the use of the conjunction "and." This would make the process impracticable, overly burdensome, and redundant. The proposed language lists 4 methods of victim notification. 1, Victim Information and Notification Everyday System, or VINE, which is a VINE system. 2, phone call. 3, email. And 4, service in person by a person authorized to serve summons and complaint. The "and" really should be changed to "or." All of the methods, the only one that I believe could fully and effectively achieve the objectives of this measure in notifying victims is the VINE. As a part of the office's due diligence for this hearing, we reached out to the people who operate the VINE program and had a productive discussion about the cost and features of this system. It is not cheap, but the benefits to the victims would be well worth it. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this system, it is the nation's leading victim notification network. It allows survivors, victims of crime, and other concerned citizens to access timely and reliable information about offenders offenders or criminal cases. Currently, it is available in various parts of 48 states and nearly its main purpose is to allow victims to be given updates by
Attorney General,
email.
Attorney General, just 1 second. Attorney General?
My power just went out. Can you hear me?
Well, you started freezing. So I need to go back and start from the second sentence where you started "for those who are unfamiliar with this process, with this system."
For those? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me well now? Because our power is still out here at the GRS building.
Yes, we can.
But you can hear me well now?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Okay. Okay, I'll continue. For those who are unfamiliar with this system, it is the nation's leading victim notification network. It allows survivors, victims of crime, and other concerned citizens to access timely and reliable information about offenders or criminal cases. Currently, it is available in various parts of 48 states and nearly 3,000 detention facilities. Its main purpose is to allow victims to be given updates via text, email, or phone the status of offenders incarcerated or recently released. The system allows any individual to access this information, which proves useful to victim advocacy groups or watchdog groups, as well as any other concerned citizen. Unfortunately, I have only had the one meeting with the VINE representative, so my information is very limited, but I'm impressed and hopeful that this can be used to secure the safety and security of crime victims and witnesses in the territory that need these notifications. Additionally, I spoke with BOC Director Testemark, who is intimately familiar with the VINE system and can attest to its effectiveness at correctional facilities stateside, which is another reason which makes BOC the best candidate for its implementation as well. I will point out, though, that there is no funding source in the proposed measure to support any of the notification methods, including the BIND. This would require an amendment identifying funds in order to make real crime victim notification happen for the persons who need it. In short, DOJ does not support today's measure as it is currently drafted, but would be more than willing to work with the sponsor to make expeditious crime victim notification a reality. I believe that this measure should be amended in the following manner: that the BIND system be fully funded, that the BIND system be an established method of notification to victims, that to establish the BIND system under the Bureau of Corrections with links to the Department of Justice and the Superior Court and other victim services and stakeholders. I would again like to thank the chair of this committee for allowing me to testify on Bill number 34-0141, and I, along with my team, St. Croix Criminal Chief, who is familiar with how the VINE works, and the Director of Victim Services, Elma Brathwaite, are available to address any questions and concerns that the members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General, for your testimony. Ms. Clemma Lewis, Director for St. Croix Women's Coalition, you're recognized for your testimony.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Clemma Lewis. I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Coalition of St. Croix. First, let me take a moment to thank the Honorable Senator Donna Fred Gregory for sponsoring the bill number 34-0141. And Honorable Senator Payne, can I just have one moment before I start, if you mind? I need to say something. Would that be okay or out of order?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
What I just wanted to say and make it quickly, I appreciated how you opened with the prayer and recognizing all the deaths, but I need to add, we also had 2 minors killed in St. Croix last week, and I'm working with the families, so I don't want them to be forgotten. They were only 17 years old. So I want us to also reach out and pray for the young people that's dying as well. I thought that was important to add because I'm sure the families are listening and paying attention as well. So the Women's Coalition of St. Croix is in support of Bill number 34-0141, an act amending the Title 34 VI Code, Chapter 8, to require that the Virgin Islands Attorney General's office to expeditiously notify victims of crime against the person of the release of the alleged perpetrator. We, however, would like to add, and we spoke about it earlier, it's important that the victim advocacy agencies on both islands is notified as well, because sometimes, in many cases, we're the only ones that know where the victims are. So even in parole hearings, many times they call my agency to ask me if I know where the victims are. So if we're doing any kind of victims notification, we need to be mindful of the 2 agencies in this territory that work with victims the most. So somehow we need to be included in this whole dilemma here. It has taken a local victim service advocate movement over 30 years to get the criminal justice system just to understand the importance of victim notification. Today, every state, including the District of Columbia and several territories, not ours, have victim notification policies as at least on a minimum base to protect crime victims. It is critical that this is put in place. The National Institute of Corrections, the U.S. National Attorneys National Association, the National Crime Victims' Rights Act, all speak to the importance of victims notification. This notification includes probation when they're getting out on probation, parole, work release, which is an issue, escapes from prison, court hearings, proceedings, anything, pleading, sentence, that victims are included in the entire process because it's their lives that we're talking about. In my 40 years of working with victims in the territory, let me be very honest, it has been challenging. We have a notification system, but let's be real, it does not always work. There are many times when we do not know when inmates are released on parole, work release, or completed their sentences. And the first thing that happens, of course, is victims call us. We have had many cases where victims were approached by the alleged perpetrator in public. Work, school, banks, stores, government agencies. To their surprise, the perpetrator shows up. We have received calls from the public about alleged perpetrators working on the streets, on school grounds without notification to the people that's involved, that's impacted by this perpetrator, who would be afraid just by seeing them. I know that some of the perpetrators were convicted as sex offenders. It is critical that victims and the community know when perpetrators are released. Crime is on the rise in our community. We started off with that. Crime is on the rise. There's usually a victim as a result of every crime. So let's be clear about that as well. Whether it's the person that has deceased or the family members that have been left behind. We also know that there's a lot of retaliation. Let me say that again. We also know there's a lot of retaliation in our community as well, and that's why there's constant fear. Therefore, letting victims know that the alleged perpetrator out can give them time to prepare, whether they want to seek counseling and support for trauma. This law can possibly save lives just by notifying the victim that the person who committed the crime against them is released in whatever form or fashion. As a result of the notification, they may decide they want to change their routines. They might want to move from where they're located. And in some cases, we've had to relocate people off the island. Let us bring the Virgin Islands in compliant with all other states and territories, and let's do the right thing for crime victims and families in this territory. I 100% support what Adeji said about the VING, but it's working on the federal level. We need to bring it on the local level because I've had contact with the federal level myself. So VING is already here in the Virgin Islands, and the U.S. Attorney's Office is using it. So thank you, Senator, for the time, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Director Lewis, for your testimony. At this time, Mr. Carwood, you're recognized to read your testimony into the record.
Thank you, Senator Payne. Can you guys hear me well before I begin? Thank you.
Yes, you can.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Stephen D. Payne Sr., members of the Committee on Homeland Security, Justice, and Public Safety, other distinguished members of the 34th Legislature, staff members, and the listening and viewing audiences. I am Kaiser A. Callwood, Chief Strategy Officer and Acting Public Information Officer, reading the testimony on behalf of Director Winnie Testamock, Director of the Virgin Islands Bureau of Corrections, here in Bureau or BOC. The Bureau fully supports Bill number 34-0141, an act amending Title 34 Virgin Islands Code, Chapter 8, to require the Virgin Islands Attorney General's Office to expeditiously notify victims of crimes against the person of the release of their alleged perpetrator. The Bureau worked closely with the Office of Senate President Donna Fred Gregory to address its concerns. Existing law requires that the parole board notify all victims of crime within 30 days of their release on parole. 5 VIC subsection 4606. This bill goes beyond the existing law by requiring that the Department of Justice notify alleged victims of domestic violence of their pretrial release of their alleged offender. As of 2015, 41 states provided a victim with the right to be notified when a defendant is released before trial. Each year, hundreds of new victims' rights laws and innovative practices and principles are enacted and implemented worldwide. As former President Clinton once said, when someone is a victim, he or she should be at the center of the criminal justice process, not at the outside looking in. In conformity with President Clinton's words, this bill solidifies the relevance, appropriateness, and best practices realization of victim information and notification. For example, a 2009 publication issued by the Council of State Government, American Probation and Parole Association, through a cooperative agreement awarded by the Office for Victims of Crime, Office of Justice Programs, U.S. Department of Justice, provide an exhaustive list of pertinent information victims of crime should receive and the opportunities they should have in the justice system process, which acts as a mental and emotional reconstruction motivator to help victims put their lives back together. 10 years later, in April 2019, the National Conference of State Legislatures released an article titled "Victims Post-Conviction Rights When an Offender is Released, Moves or Attempts to Move Between System, Escapes, or Dies," that provides an overview of various rights applicable to victims. The granting of crime victims the ability to participate through notification and pertinent information is precisely the type of participatory right that should continuously be practiced through the criminal justice process. For this bill to work as intended, there must be an organized system and linkage in place between both the Virgin Islands Department of Justice and the Virgin Islands Bureau of Correction to notify victims uniformly and consistently when an alleged offender is released. We strongly recommend the Virgin Islands adopt a nationwide victim information and notification everyday VINE system now in use by 48 states. VINE is a free automated telephone and text messaging system that electronically links crime victims to a national communication center that gives victims, their families, and other interested parties the custody status of any offender housed in a participating correctional facility. The Virgin Islands must harness existing technology to give effective notification to victims of domestic violence. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman and fellow committee members, I urge the committee's favorable consideration of this proposed piece of legislation. We must ensure that the fundamental rights of victims are expanded and enforced within our justice system. Mr. Chairman and committee members, thank you for allowing the Virgin Islands Bureau of Correction to present this testimony to the committee to be read into the record.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Carwood. And now, Ms. Anya Stewart from the Family Resource Center, you're recognized to place your testimony onto the record.
Good morning to everyone at the sound of my voice. My name is Anya Stewart. I serve as the Executive Director for the Family Resource Center, Inc. On behalf of our board and staff, I'm taking this opportunity to thank the Committee on Homeland Security, Justice, and Public Safety, and to all the senators who helped amend this bill. I also thank Senator Donna Gregory Fred for sponsoring this amendment. At Family Resource Center, everyone who's at the sound of my voice know that we deal with domestic violence on a daily basis. It doesn't matter what day it is, weekends or holidays. You could be on a vacation and you get a phone call telling you that something is happening and they need your help. So that I'm just letting you all know that we are committed and we are willing to partner with other agencies to make our community safe. However, on bill number 340141 is an act amending Title 34 Virgin Islands Code, Chapter 8, to require the Virgin Islands Attorney General's Office to expeditiously notify victims of crime against the person of the release of the alleged perpetrator. We at Family Resource Center, Inc. serve a population that are vulnerable, hurt, abused, have been victimized, and many times are left with nothing except their own truth. We try our best to support and believe them when they come to our doors, and we work with them through counseling, crisis intervention, etc., to help them find themselves, trust their decisions and instincts, build self-concept and self-esteem, build trust, restore hope, and assist to navigate their way through various challenges that may be prevalent in society and their own lives. As victims of domestic violence, where their power and control have been taken away, preyed upon by perpetrators whose sole purpose is to keep them discouraged, powerless, oppressed, isolated, victimized, etc. With no sense of direction and way out of the abuse situation, it is important to help our victims get back power and control of their lives. As such, amending Title 34 of Virgin Islands Code, Chapter 8, to require the Virgin Islands Attorney General Office to expeditiously notify victims of crime against the person of the release of the alleged perpetrator is certainly a plus and a step in the right direction. Amending this bill will provide much relief to the population that we serve. Too many times clients are perpetrated against and their abusers are released from jail, only to victimize them again because our victims of crime are not aware of the release of the perpetrator. Further amending this bill is vital because it will allow our victims sufficient notice to prepare themselves mentally, emotionally, physically, and psychologically, as well as put certain protective measures in place in order to ensure their safety. Further, victims can have a plan in place that they can safely execute should the perpetrator decide to unlawfully contact them, instead of being in a state of shock or surprise in finding out after the fact that their abuser is out of prison. Victims of crime would be on guard and remain vigilant as their safety and well-being is key. Successfully amending this bill can help save lives and hopefully begin to build the confidence that many of our victims have lost in the system. This would help to restore trust in the system and allow victims to cooperate and work diligently with persons who have their best interests at heart. Victims will feel empowered and that they matter and are included in the process of having justice served on their behalf. As the Executive Director of Family Resource Center, Inc., I strongly support the amending of Bill number 34-0141 to give ample notice to the victims of crime regarding the release of the alleged perpetrator. To conclude, like I said before, Team FRC is committed to providing well-needed services at our agency. Thank you, Senator Payne and Senator Donafred.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. At this time, we'll go into a round of questioning, 7-minute rounds. We have first, I'll go with Senator James, and second, Senator Francis, third, Senator Francis Heiliger, and so forth. Right now, we have a point of information, Senator Fred Gregory. Senator Fred Gregory, you're notified. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think it's important that as the Vice Chair of the Committee on Finance, that I address the testimony provided by the Attorney General this morning around the Department of Justice's proposed 2022 budget that was denied by this body. I am not certain, and this is basically information, what happens on the executive branch level. But as the Committee on Finance proceeded to move forward with the markup of our 2022 appropriation for the territory, we received changes, recommended changes to reduce several departments and agencies' budget from the executive branch. So I don't know what the communication is that occurs between the executive branch and its respective departments and agencies, but this body did not deny the budget. Our responsibility is to ensure that our revenues are in line with our expenses, and we moved a budget in FY22 that aligned the expenses with the appropriation. While we may have other items we would like to include in our budget, we cannot move a budget that is not a balanced budget. So the responsibility of the department and agencies is to look within their institution or look within their organization and make the necessary decisions that will assist them with moving their responsibility forward in the most effective manner. I thought it was important for me to put that on the record this morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Fred Gregory. At this time, Senator James, you're recognized for your 7 minutes.
Good day to the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time. Good afternoon. I said good morning, testifiers. Thank you for your testimony that you have placed on the record here today. I will get straight to the point. I heard the VINE program mentioned several times today. So my question to Attorney General Denise George, what is the total cost to run something similar as the VINE program?
Well, in our meeting, we got a quote, but just based on just general information. And it seems to run as far as, with links with Department of Justice and the Bureau of Corrections alone, it runs around $23,000 to establish the program, and then about approximately $60,000 a year to continue it. And then if you add the courts, which is what we're proposing as a part of it, then it would even be more. But that was just a quote that was initially granted so we can have an idea. But I want you to get, Attorney Amy Simpson, who's there. She has a lot more knowledge about it than I do, so I'm going to defer to her.
Good morning, everyone, and I'm glad to address any other questions on this topic. With regard to the cost, what the Attorney General is saying is that the beautiful thing about the VINE system is that it allows for a number of different organizations' information to be collected within the system. So, the quote that we have currently is to collect the Department of Justice information and the Bureau of Corrections information. We're hoping that we would be able to add the court system as well. And the reason for that is because then victims would be able to look at what's going on in the court system as well. Yes.
Excuse me, 1 second. I don't want to eat up my time. I asked the question regarding costs.
Yes, sir. My only addition to that would be that it would be slightly more than the startup cost of $22,000 and the annual cost of $65,000 to add the court system. That's all the information we have at this time.
So that's less than $100,000, and that's basically $1 for every person that lives in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We will definitely try our very best to make sure that we can get that. If we can build all these projects and all these other things that people tend to say we're wasting money on, we could definitely put the VINE system in place. As far as the manpower, can the Attorney General just explain to me, based on your level of experience and research with the VINE program, how many individuals would we need to run a VINE program? I know it has to do with BOC, if I'm not mistaken, but you seem to have a lot of knowledge about it. So can you place that on the record?
I will also defer that to Ms. Simpson, because it requires less manpower than you might think, but we might just have to manage the program. Go ahead.
That's absolutely correct. Because it is outsourced, it would not require very much at all in the way of manpower from any of our departments. I think that initially there would be some manpower required to get all the information in the system, but after that they manage it for us.
And up to now, I haven't heard exactly how many individuals we would need. I need just an idea, a number. Two,
Sir,
three,
I would
four
say
individuals.
one or two or less.
That's the question. That's the answer I'm looking for. And as far as the bill, I want to say kudos to the sponsor of the measure, the good Senate President from the District of St. Thomas. Is timely, and it's just so unfortunate that we tend to see these cases rise in the territory. And I'm hoping and praying with the amount of things that we put in the budget and the different acts that were passed by this body when it comes to the camera situation. And then we have another bill here today that speaks to license plate readers and everything that this body has been doing to make sure that at the end of the day, the executive branch has the resources to fight crime. I'm just hoping and praying that we work together. And I know sometimes we have to do our part, and it might seem as if we're bashing the executive branch, but that is not the case. Our job is to provide checks and balances, and sometimes it will consider tough love. So with the bill that we have before us, I stand in full support. Mr. Chair, cut me off if you may, because I can't hear if they're calling time. But I know there were 3 concerns from the Department of Justice: the VINE system to be fully funded, the VINE system to be the established method of notification to victims, and to establish the VINE system under the BOC with links to DOJ and the Superior Court and other victim services and stakeholders. So I'm happy that the Attorney General actually gave us solutions instead of just naming the problems. So I really want to thank you, Attorney General Denise George, for your testimony. And last but not least, when it comes to the Women's Coalition, I want to thank Ms. Clemma Lewis and everyone who plays an important role in fighting for women victims in the U.S. Virgin Islands and for our young children. So once again, thank you to the sponsor of the bill, and I will be supporting it with the amendments that were mentioned, or the amendment that was mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Senator James. Thank you very much. We have a point of inquiry, Senator Fred Gregory. Senator Fred Gregory, you're recognized for your point of inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just ask, currently in law, it says that our responsibility is to notify domestic violence victims. How is that occurring now?
That question is to Attorney General?
Whomever is responsible.
Okay. Who notifies victims presently for domestic violence cases?
I believe that is within the, there's a provision, as I think it was indicated in my presentation, that is the courts particularly regarding to pretrial releases. They're required to issue the order with respect to release and notify the victims, the clerk of the court. So the clerk of the court respect particularly required by this. And then it is all your corrections for post-trial for release the court, and I would refer that to Mr. But that's where the law places it on courts and the BOC.
Okay, thank you, Attorney General.
That's post-trial, Attorney General. I am not talking about post-trial. I'm talking about pre-trial. That's the issue. That's part of the primary concern that we have today. I'm speaking about pre-trial, not post-trial. I want to be clear. Who is doing that now?
May I answer?
And I'll give an example as to why I'm asking this question. This whole law and this whole discussion comes out of what you call, what is the name of it? Marcy's Law. After Marcy Nicholas, the sister of Henry Nicholas, president and CEO of Broadcom Corporation, who was stalked and murdered in 1983. 1 week after her death, her family ran into her accused murderer at the grocery store. They had no idea that he had been released on bail. My question is tied to pre-trial, not post.
Yes. My answer was regarding pre-trial and post-trial. As I indicated, pre-trial would be the responsibility of the court. Under section title 16, Virgin Islands Code, section 99. The power just went on, so there's some noise going on. But when a defendant, it states, when a defendant is charged with a crime or offense involving domestic violence is released from custody before trial on bail or personal recognizance, the clerk of the court or other person designated by the court shall provide a copy of this order to the victim forthwith. So the law, to answer your question, pre-trial, the law places the responsibility on the court to do so.
I have a follow-up to Ms. Clemmer.
Yeah, because I'm dying to say something.
Okay.
Is it happening?
No.
All right.
And I was hoping I would have the opportunity. That's why this law is so important. It's not happening. Most of the time, the court don't even know where to find the victims. And even if they did, the victim's not getting the information. Again, they walking up on the perpetrators in the street, and this is not safe. No, it's not happening. It's not happening.
And may I?
Attorney General, you were saying something? No?
Yeah, I just want to add to that as far as what's happening now, and I hear you, which is why we need something like measure. What is that's also happening that's sometimes, even though the law, because the law places a responsibility on the court, but
well, excuse me, Attorney General. Attorney General, could you check again your system? You're starting to go back and forth now. I don't know if you may have to sign out and sign back in.
I'm on and go back on. Since the power is on, I'll go back on. So I'm going to have to leave and come back.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
That'd be fine. I don't want to lose a moment. So again, you know, for me, what I've heard today is disturbing to me. I spent 26 years as a police, and having joined the police department May 11, 1987, I still consider myself a police now. And to hear that the Attorney General's office disagreed with the bill and everyone else agreed with the bill, to me, it doesn't place where the emphasis should be, that of the victim, at the foreplay and the front. The victim is the most important element of this. So to add how much money it costs, add we don't have the manpower, when it could be, hey, an email, how much people you need to email something, how much people we need to make a phone call. You know, the superior courts have marshals, they could send out, so we don't have. So to hear those kind of what I consider to be excuses really disturbs me as a resident and as a former law enforcement person. Is just mind-boggling. You know, I think this is something we have to see that it is taking place. Victims are being confronted back in the territory by their perpetrators, and all we are saying is, well, we need money, we need to do it. This has to stop. You know, let's set from today forth, you know, a victim should be held in a higher regard. They were violated. They shouldn't have been a victim in the first place. Now they are. So if that's the situation, we should go the extra mile to address this particular issue. So Attorney General was just saying that I was disturbed to hear that the Attorney General's office disagreed with this bill and everyone else agreed. And I understand your dynamics, but the victim has to come first at some point. You know, we can't make excuses of, I don't have the manpower, I don't have enough money. You know, someone who got up out their house, perfect state of mind, a beautiful day, at the end of that day, they became a victim. And then it comes down to a point of, well, who should have notified them? Then they go to shop on a Saturday, they get themselves together. 6 weeks later, they get themselves together, they finally come out their house, go to the grocery store to pick up something to go back into the house, and they're confronted by the same perpetrator. That has to stop. So to have this conversation of making excuses, you know, that has to stop. So I understand your plight, and we have to put what our situations are up front. But I think, again, we have to put where that victim comes first, and then everything else after. And if it's money you need and money becomes a situation, then hey, let's have that conversation. But when we coming out in public as the leaders of this territory, can't put it out to the persons who are the victims and who are the everyday. Because when I signed on the dotted line in 1987 as a police, it was to serve and protect, period. That's where it ended for me. Everybody, I serving and protecting. So I think we have to watch some of what we are putting out to the public and make them understand and feel like, hey, we are here to serve them and make them feel worthy. Wait, let me just do a little check again on you, Attorney General, and then I'll go to the next senator. Try again, Attorney General. I think you're speaking and we're not hearing you. Are you on mute? Okay.
You can hear me okay?
I can hear you now. Say again.
Yes, I certainly, I didn't hear everything you said, but I heard the gist of what you said concerning that I couldn't support the measure. And remember what I said, and I made it very clear that I wholly applaud Senator Gregory's intent for this bill, because we need to have a system that we can notify victims. It can be a matter of life and death. So I'm very much in support of that. And that's why I'm also trying to push for a system that really works. So when I said that I'm not supporting the measure as written, is what I said, because there were certain things in there that were since then amended, particularly putting the onus on the Department of Justice that doesn't have the information that would be from the BOC with respect to the release of these inmates, and a few other things. But it had nothing to do with the intent of this bill, which is to get some kind of system in place that we can notify victims to protect them. That is the utmost priority for the Virgin Islands Department of Justice and for me. Every single day or every other day, whenever we have advisement and these crimes occur, the attorneys are there in court at the pre-trial stage after arrest, advocating for the safety of the victims. They are the ones advocating to not release these victims if there is any semblance of risk of harm to the victims or the witnesses or to the community. And they constantly fight for that, because we are the voice of the victims when we stand before the court and we deal with the bail hearings and everything and the release hearings. So make no mistake about it, my statement was clear that it was as written. Certain things as written would have created a situation where it could not be performed, and the way that we wanted, the results would not be.
Okay, Attorney General, thank you very much. Senator Francis is back. So, Senator Francis, you're recognized for your 7 minutes.
I don't know how much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of the testifiers for their testimony. And pleasant good morning to the people of the Virgin Islands. You know, this bill is very, very important, and I want to commend the bill sponsor on this piece of legislation. And, you know, there's some comments that perhaps there's some things on the book already that allow for some of this to be done, but the reality is it's not being done. And I'm surprised, I'm a little bit taken back that we're having a $100,000 discussion, because what is the price of life? And that is a rhetorical question. What is the price of life? So while there may be $100,000 that's required, then I would want to hear from the Attorney General then mandate or ask this legislative body to make sure that we're appropriating the $100,000 to take care of this issue. But we can't allow this to be an impediment or a barrier by which we're saving lives. We heard the testimony from Clemma Lewis over at the Women's Coalition. In fact, this measure could very well save someone's life. So
exactly, agreed.
There is an amendment that's coming, and I will be offering the amendment on behalf of the bill's sponsor, so that we could address some of the concerns that have been raised by the Attorney General. But this bill is certainly necessary, but more importantly, we want to make sure that it's implemented and is executed. And for me, when we look at the people's representative, I'm even believing that this bill might stop short a little bit. When we look at the law enforcement that may be involved, again, in making sure that that suspect is prosecuted, arrested, prosecuted, and sent off, and pay the price of justice. When you look at the Attorney General that may be prosecuting the case, when you look at the judges that may also try this case, those individuals as well as the victim. Of course, the victim is number one in these type of situation, but all those other entities, the people's representative is also at risk when this suspect is released. I'll give you a story. Some years ago, I was sitting down in the Frederiksted Fish Market on a Saturday morning and just there, and I felt a little bit uneasy when this person was really just watching me in a hard and dreadful manner. And after I did a little bit of a search and find out what's going on, I realized that individual was someone that I had arrested 14 years prior. I had gone to jail for that period of time and now on release. I was a sitting duck, not knowing that this individual is now on release and could very well now want to seek revenge for him going to jail. So here it is that this situation is not just for the victim, because that victim in that particular case had expired because it was a murder case. But this individual now had served some time and had gotten released after trial and serving time, like I said, 14 years, and now out. Now, in my personal space, and now I am a threat, or my livelihood is at bay as a result of this individual. So here it is that I'm saying that, yes, it's not just the victims, but also the people's representative. And, we have seen where crime and violence have escalated in this territory, unfortunately, to the levels where people are not safe in their home, prosecutors won't be safe, the law enforcement won't be safe, and even judges may very well not be safe as a result of doing their part to make sure that they're the people's representative and that, in fact, those individuals as responsible for the violation is held culpable and responsible. So, Madam Attorney General, I hear what you're saying, and I certainly agree with you that it should be the responsibility of the Bureau of Correction and not so much or in consort with the Department of Justice, but the ultimate responsibility should be on the Bureau of Corrections as well as the parole board to make sure that victims are notified. And when we look at victims, and I've sat in the seat, you're always concerned whether or not you're notifying the right family members. A lot of times you may call a spouse and believe that that's sufficient to notify that family member. You may call a brother and believe that that's sufficient in notification of that family member, when maybe their sisters and other family members are equally concerned, and they will always say, I wasn't notified, I'm not aware that this person is released. So I believe it'll be important for us also to make sure that there's a designated representative of the family that should be notified, so that that person will then ultimately be responsible for notifying the other family members so that we can make whole and make good on this particular piece of legislation. Attorney General, what do you say on that?
I say I absolutely agree. And what I'll tell you is with the bind system, it creates that situation where the initially, as I understand it, the persons, the victims themselves enter in to their information as far as where they should be contacted, who should be contacted, and everything. So so that covers that, which I just think, it's almost like bringing ourselves into the 21st century with this victim notification. It's almost like a no-brainer that we need to implement this. And, hearing from Ms. Lewis, Clemma Lewis, that the U.S. Attorney's Office, the federal government have been using this for years. I heard from Director Testemark that where she came from, where she was previously employed, the correctional system used it up there. And, you know, it's a no-brainer. I really think it's about time that we get this system and that we really start to make it work for our victims. So I agree 100%.
In addition to that, Madam AG, in respect to the Crime Victim Compensation Commission, is that active? And in fact, are victims being compensated through the commission?
I have to say that I have not participated in a meeting for quite some time, so I do not know how robust it is, but my designated person on that commission is actually Elma Brathwaite, who is the Director of Victim Services, who is on here, but I have not seen it, but maybe she'll be able to have more of a response with respect to any meetings or anything.
Oh, here it is again, another piece of legislation, another compensation that's due to victim. I'm hoping that there's no lapse in there, and that we're actually taking care of this particular issue, because I help to pay and make whole those victims that may not have been able to pay for medical bills and other injuries that has been sustained as a result of the suspect taking action against them. And I had a conversation earlier this week with the Commissioner of Human Services, and we want to make sure that those suspects are also culpable and responsible to making sure that they pay their fair share into that compensation fund to make sure that those victims are made whole. Ms. Clemma Lewis, good morning. How are you doing?
Senator Francis, your time has
I'm
been
sorry.
called,
Good morning.
go ahead,
Good morning, Senator Francis. I'm good. How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. I've just heard that my time had been called. I just really wanted to reach out to you in respect to some of my comments in regards to making sure that additional individuals, to include law enforcement, attorney, prosecutor, attorney, judges, may also need to be added to this list. So that we're making sure that we're taking care of all of those individuals that are ultimately charged as a people's representative to hold the suspect accountable. But my time had been called, so I want to thank you for the time. I'm sorry I wasn't able to query some of the other members on this panel today. Thank you very much for the time, Mr. Chair. I am in support of this bill.
Okay, so was that final? Did everyone answer who you wanted answer for your question?
Just the, I guess at this point we can have the Women's Coalition, Ms. Clemma Lewis, respond to it. We have battled many years in the trenches, so I'd like for her to give some feedback on that.
Okay, sure, I'll allow that. Ms. Lewis, you could go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I agree 100% with Senator Francis. We need to include the police, the victim advocates. When he gave that story about sitting at the fish market, and this perpetrator showed it up, it reminds me of how many times I'm in hearings and dealing with victims and going public, and then somebody that I know committed a crime get out we're not aware of, and then they approach me as well and threaten me. So it is important to include the victim advocate, the police, the people in the system that's involved with this case, because all of us are supposed to be supporting the victim as well. As far as I'm concerned, in many of these cases, all of us could be victims. So we have to be aware of that. The system is not working. One thing you all know is I'm very honest, and I will tell the truth. The system is not working. Victims are not getting the information, and when they don't get it, they come to the Women's Coalition or they go to Family Resource Center. You can't leave us out the loop. We have to be a part of the process, because in most instances, we know where the victims are, and a lot of times we might have them in hiding. We might have sent them off island. You're not going to know all that because we're not going to put that out in public. So it's critical to have the key people a part of this process. So I'm 100% with you, Senator Francis.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you for that, because it's I was speaking to the bill sponsor offline too in regards to the same concerns, Senator Francis. So I agree with you 100%. It has happened to me also. And it is real. Like you say, we're not just saying it because it's the right thing to say. It is real. It has happened. At this time, Senator Alma Francis Heiliger, you are recognized for your 7 minutes.
Good day, good morning, good morning. Good morning to my colleagues, good morning to the testifiers, good morning to the people of the territory. I think that this is a very timely conversation that we need to have, especially with all the things that we see happening in our community. And when you're dealing with unfortunate victims that have had to deal with a lot of things and not realizing how important it is that they have to also be taken care of, because first and foremost, they are the victims. I was looking at the amendments, I was looking at the bill, I was looking at so many different aspects of this. But when I was looking at Act 7519, which if you ever got a chance to look at the amendment, it was attempting to amend that specific act. And I want to ask a couple questions around the improvements that are happening. In Act 7519, which was from 2023, it speaks to unless waived by the victim, the Territorial Parole Board shall within 30 days prior to notice advise the victim of the following: that an inmate is being considered for parole, that the date for the parole hearing, and 3, the victim's right to submit documents to and provide testimony for the board and the hearing. The Territorial Board shall notify the victim at least 24 hours prior to an inmate being paroled. Now, a couple of things around that, because I know with this bill that's being proposed, they amended this section to say 48 hours instead of 28 hours. That was one of the things improved here. But when you change it over to BOC, do you now take this away from the parole board, this aspect of it? Or they still within law would be dealing with that, and just totally, completely the Board of Corrections would handle everything from henceforth? Anyone understands that? Oh. Did anyone hear me?
I heard you, Senator. I don't know if the testifiers could speak, but I would hope it's in addition, because that piece of it is similar working. I have been to many parole hearings, and they do notify the victims when they can find them. And I have to give Ms. Leiber credit at BOC, because if they can't find them, they'll call my office, and I'm sure they do the same thing at the Family Resource Center, and I can't find Ms. Heiliger. Clemmer, do y'all know how to reach out? A hearing is coming. They also now publish in the newspaper. I'm very happy for that. So in terms of that piece, they've been doing a good job with that. I would have to say yes.
Because I'm happy to hear that some part is working, because we had some concerns with the court part earlier. I wanted to find out also, with this part in the law and the updates that is being done in Bill 34-141, one of the things that I recognize is not every single person is going to be paroled. There are going to be some people that their sentence is up and they leave. So I could see the importance of where we would have to add additional improvements in regards to that. So I definitely understand that aspect of it. One of the things I wanted to ask, is there anything, Attorney George, that you guys would normally have to do in regards to dealing with parolees or individuals being released from the police or Bureau of Corrections that would potentially impact this in any way? Because I know you wanted it to be shifted, but there's no part or any part that you guys need to be dealing with? Your mic.
What needed to be shifted, which the amendment does, is to put the onus on the Bureau of Corrections, because there's no way that we can know at Department of Justice when somebody is released or anything like that. So that's what that had to do with. But we have to work in conjunction with Bureau of Corrections, because we handle the cases and we have the victims. Because when we are prosecuting, it's the victims and the witnesses they're our victims and witnesses. So we have to link there, and that has been a source of somewhat frustration because of how difficult the system has been thus far, as expressed to me by our Director of Victim Services, because sometimes we don't get that link, so we don't know. So sometimes we get the call. Why is this? I just ran into the person who just assaulted me. Or the court just let this person out on the own recognizance just like that, and I just got assaulted, and I'm still suffering just last night. So we get the calls, and Ms. Brathwaite, she can chime in, but so that's our connection. So it is really essential that we get that information so we could take care of the victims as well, if possible.
Definitely. This is for Bureau of Corrections. Do you guys have any plans in place when you're attempting someone has to be released from the Bureau of Corrections? Are there any types of plans to help teach them for prevention of interacting with former victims, prepare them for going back on the outside to know, stay clear? Are there any things like that you do in preparation of them being released?
Good afternoon, it's Assistant Director Hansen. Yes, we do. Our inmates do have counseling when they're here. When they're in our custody, they are counseled. Obviously, what needs to happen is we do need to work in concert with the Department of Justice. We need to make, what we need to do is make this a part of our release protocol, that we inform Justice that when the intent is to release, they're notified. I do agree that it doesn't need to be a phone call. We need to do this on all forms, all media, so that everyone is informed. If we do that, I can see us making a difference in this matter.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And for any of you, outside of the organizations that do deal with victims, are you inundated as a government from many of the victims that are reaching out for help or concern if a lot of these things are not being done to notify them? What kind of complaints do you guys get?
I have to say that, may I respond?
Mr. Chairman, she finished on the time.
Yes, the time was called, but you may respond.
I may respond. Okay. Yes, indeed. And I will. I'm going to refer just briefly also to Victim Advocate Director Elma Brathwaite, because our victim services unit is very important because we help to carry the victims through the whole prosecution process as far as answering their calls. Of course, the victims are oftentimes scared, frustrated, and they're going through this, so we help them through the process. That's part of the reason why I mentioned that we need more victim advocates. We only have one in the unit because of the importance of being able to serve the victims that way. So we are impacted when this doesn't work, because when it is that they're released and it's unexpected, we don't have the opportunity to warn them. Ms. Brathwaite, I'll let you continue because I know that you intimately have been involved in this for a while. We're not hearing you. Sorry. Okay. So what I would say to answer your question, Senator, is that it does impact us tremendously. And even in response to what Senator Francis had mentioned, we are prosecutors. We get enemies. We are, in a certain position. We want to know too. So it is really quite an impact, and that's why I push for a system that can really be efficient and really work.
Also, I think Attorney Simpson wanted to chime in.
Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that often we don't get complaints from victims right away because victims aren't necessarily interested as in the first part of the criminal process. Not always, but sometimes. But the nice thing about the Vine Project would be that whenever they do become interested, they can sign up. So that would alleviate a lot of issues further down the road when we're able to help them in that form.
Okay, thank you for that. Senator Francis Heiliger, your time was called, but do you want a rebuttal in regards to what was just said?
Well, it's not so much of a rebuttal. I do appreciate the information that they have been giving and sharing so I could have a more informed decision to decide on whether this bill should move forward or not. So I want to thank you so much for this opportunity and your information. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Attorney General, in in terms of clemency, where the governor pardons an individual, how is that done? Directly from the governor's office to corrections or through your office?
We always get a copy. I know that the Attorney General would always be copied, but it is directly to the Bureau of Corrections also, and then that triggers their responsibility also to notify as far as clemency as well as the governor. But I got to say, I'm not speaking from experience because, of course, since I've been on board, there's been no clemency or anything like that because we're in the middle of the term.
Right.
But that is the case. We both will be notified.
Okay, thank you. Next, I have Senator Stephen Payne, Chairman. You're notified for your 7 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for the time, Mr. Chair. Thank you. You know, we work together as one team, so I'm honored to step aside and give you your time. Ms. Lewis and Ms. Stewart, good morning. When a person reports that they have been sexually assaulted to the authorities, what happens next in regards to the victim's advocates? Are you notified by any particular agency? Ms. Lewis, you can answer first.
Yes, on St. Croix, because it might be a little different in St. Thomas. When a victim is sexually assaulted, if it's at the police department, they go through their own victim advocate. And if they need services, more than likely they will contact us. If they go to the hospital, we are automatically called because we're on 24 hours, 7 days a week. And we put out a schedule because I have an active advocate program that's 24 hours. That's at all the police commands in the hotel. So if in the hospital. So if somebody is beat up, sexually assaulted, any crime victims, they can always call our advocate on duty. We immediately respond, whatever it is, and then we do safety measures, whether it's food, clothing, putting them in a space where they're safe, giving them the counseling and support they need through the entire process. That's how it works on my end. It might be a little different in St. Thomas. Anya can answer that.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart.
Good morning again. We literally do the same thing, but when a client comes in, we would listen to them, then contact VIPD, and if they're at the hospital, they would do a rape kit, and then we would move from there with the assistance of VIPD, and if they need further services, we would provide that at our counseling center. We would provide transportation, food supplies, toiletries, whatever they need, we would assist them.
Okay, and same ladies, after you go through an entire trial process, the person, the perpetrator is actually arrested. When they are released from prison, what happens? Ms. Lewis first.
So once the person is released, I'm going to be honest with you again, I would say 75 to 80% of the time, we don't know the person is being released. That's the issue here. So I had an incident where a victim was in a bank and the man that raped her showed up in the bank and she completely freaked out. The bank had to call my office because they didn't know what was going on. When we got there, we found out the perpetrator who raped her walked in the bank while she was in the bank line. So one thing about the victim advocacy agencies that's different than everybody else, we start with them, Senator Payne, from the beginning, and we with them for as long as possible. That means I have clients I've been with for over 20 years that go in and out of crisis. So they stay with our agencies until they no longer need the services. And if they re-offended, re-victimized, or something come up, they pick it right back up and we continue to support services. In that instance, I had to call the police and then we found out he was released. Immediately, we have to prepare the victim for the release. We got to put her in counseling, see if she's safe, see if we need to relocate her, find out what the order said when he was released. It's a lot involved, and that's why it's important we know from the beginning when that person is going to be released. And if he's a sex offender and she had children by him, he decides to get out and want to get back at her, he can go file for visitation. So the re-victimization continues, even when they come out.
Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Stewart.
Yes, even when they relocate, we remain in contact with them. We provide services virtually, and we refer them to other agencies wherever they are, and we practically do the same thing.
Okay.
The victims are always first on our list. We make sure we take care of them in whatever way we can, with whatever resources we have. We make sure we provide for them.
Okay, thank you very
And
much.
we make, okay.
Okay, Assistant Director Hansen, what type of sharing of information is done between the BOC, VIPD, and DOJ in regard to the release of inmates? Assistant Director Hansen? Assistant Director Hansen, are you still there?
Yes, I'm sorry. I had a quick an emergency.
Okay, you heard the question?
No, I did not.
Okay.
No, I did not.
Okay, what type of sharing of information is done between the BOC, VIPD, and DOJ in regard to the release of inmates?
Okay. At this point, I don't believe that there's an active sharing of information as it should be. But I do think that if we were to add this to our protocols as far as release, and I mean every single inmate that's been released within the Bureau of Corrections, and that information would go out to all of these agencies, I think that would solve this issue as far as everyone being informed. But it would have to become a part of our protocols, and we control that, so that would not be hard to implement.
Okay, and presently, is there a person at the BOC who is charged with the responsibility of identifying victims of the release of an inmate?
Well, no. Okay. Look at it this way, Senator. We're not usually informed about who the victim is. That's not information that's available to us.
Right. That's why I asked.
The Department of Justice would easily.
Right.
That would be the Department of Justice. They would have that information, and that's why I said if we work in concert, if we can inform them prior to the person being actually released, which we have the ability to do sometimes, not in the case of when we get those forthwith orders. But we can do that even with the forthwith orders before they actually are released. If they leave the facility, we can inform these other agencies.
And that is why I asked the question before about the sharing of information. Attorney General, is there someone at the DOJ who's responsible for notifying the victims of the release of a perpetrator?
The Victim Services Unit of the BI Department of Justice is that unit that would be responsible.
Attorney General? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, the victims. Again, okay, the Victim Services Unit of the Department of Justice, and the director, as I said, is Ms. Brathwaite. But that is the place that would be responsible for notifying victims. That's Victim Services Unit. So that's why that link is so important with BOC and BI Department.
Correct.
Okay. And if someone is charged, if someone changes the telephone number because the perpetrator has their number, and this is for Attorney General and your office, and when they reach out to them, they cannot reach the person by phone. Is someone sent to the last known address of the victim?
I'm pretty sure we tried to keep, as far as whether the cases with the prosecutors, if it's active cases. I wish Ms. Brathwaite could actually be heard, but they actually have to notify them and get the new numbers and everything. Victims, we keep in contact with the victims and witnesses.
Okay.
I don't want to leave out witnesses. We talk a lot about victims, of course, that's the most important thing, but witnesses are important because they're part of who needs to be protected as well. You know, so in dealing with the witnesses to violent crimes as well as the victims of violent crimes, that we keep in touch so that we can know how and when to reach them in going through the whole prosecution process.
Okay, and lastly, Attorney General, according to the testimony read into the record by Mr. Carwood from Director Testamark, Vine is a free automated telephone and text messaging system that electronically links crime victims to a national communication center that gives victims, their families, and other interested parties the custody status of any offender housed in a participating correctional facility. And since this is a free system, why would we need hundreds of thousands of dollars to fund it?
I believe it is free to the victims and the persons who need it. That's what I mean. If they don't have to pay for it, it's free to them, but it's not free to us to establish the system. And I think Attorney Simpson, I'm correct, am I not? Okay. Yes.
Okay, if we...
You are in fact.
If we have this bill is, I think it should have been in place some years ago. I mean, many years ago. If I may, Mr. Chair, years ago when I was a teacher, I was robbed at gunpoint in my classroom, and when the individuals were arrested, but they were released on trial. I mean, they released on bail. No one notified me. Every morning, I used to walk my daughter and and her cousins to school. Me and 4 little minor girls, about 5 and 7 years old, 5, 6, and 7. And one morning, I came out of my home, and we're holding hands, walking across the parking lot. And individuals who robbed me by gunpoint, robbed me in my classroom, were standing across by a car. I'm totally shocked, caught off guard. Fortunately, a safari driver who was driving by stopped that morning with a full load, but the front seat was available, and told me to jump in quick. Let me join you and your daughters to the ferry dock. I got to the ferry dock. I mean, if that didn't happen, I can't imagine what would have happened. When I got to St. Thomas, I called the detectives, asked them, and no one notified me of anything. They said, well, they didn't know because the courts didn't identify. The courts didn't let them know that the person was being released as well. These individuals, when they were out, the police was looking for them. They would travel to the prosecutor's house, who was Judge Gomez, who was a prosecutor at that time, and burned his house down. They burned his house down. These same individuals were outside of my house. And I feel that if it wasn't for that safari pass in the morning, it would have been a different story. But in the time it took for the police to rearrest them, I made sure, I told my wife at the time, you are responsible for taking the kids to and from school, and I stayed by myself. Every place I traveled by myself. I never traveled the same place. I stopped driving my personal vehicles. I started catching dollar buses and using public transportation and stuff to avoid those individuals being able to find me somewhere. So it's very, very, very important that someone notifies individuals when persons who committed crimes against them are actually released. It's very, very, very important. And I am 100% in support of this measure. Mr. Chair, thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Senator Payne. My clock had you down for another 60 seconds, but again, Madam Clerk, all time. I would like to recognize non-committee member Senator Whitaker. I didn't notice you before, so if you were there a while, I do apologize. At this time, Senator Whitaker, you are recognized for your 7 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to the entire legislative staff. Good afternoon to the testifiers. I want to first to start off that I support this measure as one who's also been a victims advocate, former board member of the Women's Coalition, and I've been actually worked more than half of my life actually on justice issues around women and even the United Nations and stuff. So this topic is really near and dear to me. And so I want to go ahead and jump into first, Mr. Callwood, can I give me your title too? I just want to make sure I know you're the spokesperson for the BOC. What's your official title? How do I reference you in this meeting? Mr. Callwood? Mr. Callwood? I'm going to hold my time because I muted. You're muted, Mr. Callwood.
I didn't hear your question. It was going in and out. My internet is going in and out.
Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure your title for the BOC. What is your title?
Chief Strategy Officer, Acting Public Information Officer.
Thank you. And to Mr. Cole, in answering the questions I was going to pose, of course, to the director, I want to first start off about, what type of training is currently in professional development is being offered to the BOC staff in the victim release.
You were saying something I only heard about release and training, and then it went out.
What types of training is being offered by the BOC currently on assisting on release of perpetrators into the community? What kinds of professional development training is being conducted by the Bureau?
Oh, you mean for the inmates? That's what you're talking about, for inmates?
For the staff of the BOC.
So the staff is actually going through a host of trainings right now. We have trainings that deals with PREA, Prison Rape Elimination Act, among other trainings in terms of release, in terms of psychological approaches and best practices that they're supposed to follow in terms of the release of inmates and handling inmates or individuals when they're getting ready to be relieved from the prison.
And in terms of capacity, does the BOC currently have the capacity to, this once BINE is implemented, do you have the system in order to really sustain this effort?
So the system is not something that we have right now. That will be something that have to be integrated. We will have to do an assessment of the staff currently on hand to determine, as indicated by Attorney Simpson, in terms of if a physical person would need to be on board to assist with that effort until that the system will work for itself. So
yeah, I know it's not yet. I know it's not offered. When you do assessments and when you look at when you do the perspectives and you actually do the analysis of what the costs are associated, I did not say the system is in place. I said, do you have the current system in place, the internet, infrastructure in order to execute this? But I'll move on to Director Clemma Lewis from the Women's Coalition. You testified to this, and I also want to thank you for also, acknowledging the fact that we continue to, in our community, suffer with the loss of children. And of course, we all, know that we have to, I offer condolences to all those impacted by violence. Most recently, of course, as we know, up to yesterday, a woman loved in our community. Before that, nearby, so it's just really on and on. So I thank you for those words and acknowledging the need to also just address crime prevention as even through this measure. So in terms of the Women's Coalition, how do you think this information, how do you think this will really result in in assisting the victims impacted? I mean, how do you, and in terms of timeline, do you see, once implemented, would the Women's Coalition be able to have the capacity to, would you need it, do you have the capacity to coordinate and implement the system in coordination with the Attorney General's Office, U.S. Attorney's Office, and the other VAP, and it's all law enforcement in order to carry out this from the Women's Coalition perspective?
Definitely. I feel like this bill is critical, Senator Whitaker, because I've been praying and fussing for years. Victims are not being notified and they're being impacted. The more crime we have, the more victims we have. If they put the victim notification in place, which I think would be excellent, because I've already participated in it in the federal level, and it is excellent, and it doesn't cause extra work for the rest of us. Right now, if victims are not notified, the perpetrator is out. It's more work for us when we don't know. At least if we get the information from the Bureau of Corrections or the Department of Justice, whoever, it gives us enough time to put things in place that's going to make sure the victim and the family is safe. So we on board. It's not going to be more work. I think it's going to be important, and I think my staff would be excited to do whatever it can to make victims more notified and get us in place and get ready for when perpetrators are released, because it can be really scary for us as well as the victims, because sometimes the perpetrators come after us because if they feel like it's our fault that they're in jail. So it's also important for our staff as well that this is put in place.
Thank you, Director Lewis. And in terms of data, are you currently compiling a number of victims who, in fact, have been re-victimized by these individuals who come back out, as you laid out, persons coming to their jobs and and just being re-victimized? Do you have any statistics on that?
I haven't compiled any statistics, Senator, to be honest. Strictly speaking from one-on-one experience, because a lot of those were my clients. So really speaking from firsthand knowledge of dealing with the victims and their experience, but not necessarily compiled them. It probably would take a while, but I think if I got my staff together, we probably could come up with some numbers. But I don't have them offhand right now.
Yes, because I would say it's really critical as we go through this process, data information, and all of our stakeholders, we have to work from a numbers perspective, and in order for us to drive this home. And finally, Attorney General Denise George, your testimony was very clear. I really appreciate the analysis of the provisions, and I certainly look forward to working with the bill sponsor on supporting the efforts. I just wanted the main question I have for you in terms of, I know you had this initial information on the Vine system. In terms of your working relationship with the U.S. Attorney, Attorney Shepard, do you think that as we look at the legislation, how best we can work out the legislation so there's a true coordinated effort between your office and the U.S. Attorney's office?
Well, I'm not sure the legislation would do that, but we have our separate cases and everything. But when we need to collaborate for the benefit of the territory, we do that. So we're both prosecution agencies, but considering that they have by now and they have that system, I think it's great. It's about time we get up to speed with that so that we will have that also. But the victims are victims here. They're the common victims here in the Virgin Islands. So we're servicing both. So of course, I don't think it needs legislation to collaborate, because we do collaborate in dealing with these cases, and we're dealing with common victims, and the notification is of utmost importance.
Yeah, thank you for that, and I appreciate that. I think that's something that we, when we do, we draft legislation and we see how sometimes it's just mere matter of policies. And if I would conclude, Chair, because I did lose some time in the beginning with the first.
Yes, you may conclude. Your time has been called, but you may conclude.
Thank you, Chairman. And I just want to express in my conclusion that I want to say that I want to thank all of those all the testifiers who are on, and all of those who are working on behalf of victims. And we just can continue. I think it would be great for us to work, in collaborative efforts, align ourselves. And even I would also, I'm really putting out a call to a lot of what's going on national and international. There's a lot of advocacy needed to be done on the international level. I attend a lot of international meetings. I'm very involved in United Nations and UN Women, and just my long list of efforts with is very long. And I would like really to see our voices lifted on the international level and the global level, and join with other voices in support of advocacy. So thank you, and thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Whitaker. Senator Johnson, welcome. If you were there before, I do apologize again, because I was looking at how the screens are shifting. So, welcome. We're waiting for you. Senator Johnson, you're recognized for your 7 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the testifier. I do apologize for being here late today, but I definitely had to pay my respect to one of my co-worker, Mr. Cruz Santana, who I work some 20 plus years in the Bureau of Correction, and then we both moved on to the district court and worked maybe the next 8 to 10 years there. So I definitely must extend condolence to his family and his passing. Very good man that did his time and did well at the Bureau, did well. So I definitely will be missing my comrade. Good afternoon to the testifiers. Attorney General, I'd like to ask a question, I'm going to need some help from you. There used to be a program to assist victims of violent crime. Does that still exist?
I'm not familiar with that. A specific program. No, I'm not familiar with that. What you're referring to.
Yellow?
I don't. Ms. Brathwaite, if you just say by saying yes, was there one? Are you familiar with a specific one to assist?
Well, why I asked that question, I can recall where the prisoners who were sentenced with a violent crime normally has to pay restitution. And that funding will go in, that money would go into an account that would assist those victims of violent crime. So I don't have a particular one, but I'm trying to find out if this program do exist, if these laws are being followed, and if the prisoners who was sentenced to a crime of violence, if restitution is being paid.
Well, I know that restitution is always a part of any sentence because then restitution is not is not a penalty, it's not a punishment, it is just to restore the victim as much as possible. Attorney Simpson, are you aware of anything now with respect to a program where restitution is used for crime victims?
I think what the Honorable Senator may be referring to is the Crime Victim Compensation Program, which we had discussed briefly a little bit earlier. If that is what the Senator is referring to, then absolutely, it is still alive and well. And I know that the VIPD and representatives from our office are ensuring that victims are given funds out of that Victim Compensation Fund as appropriate.
Thank
you. I think we all are speaking about something totally different. And I'm recalling from when I worked at the Bureau and I ran the programs. Any prisoner that worked out the facility that had a job, he had to pay a 10% of what he made to that account, and that money would be utilized for victims of violent crime. So I think that's the question I'm really trying to ask. And if this is still a process, if it's still working, and if it's not, where do we go to make sure that we get this program working where these persons who was convicted of violent crime that are making a little money, that they pay their fair share to the victim?
I don't know of the program, but we can always, offline if you can identify it, but I am unfamiliar with such a program. But certainly, if you can let us know what that is, and if it is in fact still in existence locally, then we can look at re-implementing it.
Thank you. I came in late. Who's representing the Bureau? I understand Testamark is not here. Mr. Calwood, are you representing the Bureau?
Both Mr. Hanson and myself, sir.
Mr. Hanson, good. The Assistant Director, Hanson?
Yes, Senator.
Do you recall of that program, and if you guys have that still intact, where prisoners who are working, that was sentenced for a crime of violence, is contributing their fair share back into that program and into that account?
I don't believe that it's still in a program that is working at the Bureau. I don't believe so. I do know of what you're talking about based on the amount of years I've been here, but I don't believe that program still exists.
Attorney General, I think that you and the Bureau needs to get in communication to make sure, because a lot of people don't understand. Any prisoner that's in the facility that's doing any type of work, whether it's janitorial, cutting the grass, they get paid. And out of that payment, some of that money should go to that account to make sure that people who was victim of violent crime be taken care of. So I would appreciate, Attorney General, that you try to communicate with the Bureau and see if we can make sure that this program is put back in place and make sure that the victims get compensated and make sure that those who are incarcerated pay their fair share back. Ms. Clemma Lewis, good morning to you. Good afternoon, I should say. Is there any website where a victim of crime can obtain financial and other social services available as a result of being a victim of, including information on how to apply for that assistance and service? Is there a website available?
I don't know of any website available. They do have information out on crime victims compensation, which is from the local government. But normally we make sure we advertise in our services, and I believe the Family Resource Center does, that we also provide some financial assistance for victims of crime, depending on the crime as well. But I don't know of any particular website that would cover it. Usually crime victims are covered from agencies that get money from VAWA, OVW, that kind of thing, to help provide services for victims. So right now, Crime Victim Conversation is the only one on St. Croix I know that does that. And I heard they're active. I didn't know they were active, so I'm it's good to hear that.
And I thank you. And if I do repeat some of my questions, is because I came late. And I would like to ask Ms. Anaya Stewart, at your center, how often do you receive complaints or concerns from victims stating that they have been contacted by their perpetrator? And Clement Lewis, too, Ms. Lewis, if you can tell me.
Yes, we do. I remember some time last, I think it was in October of 2021, a client called me on my personal phone. She was so frantic and it's like she was going crazy. Miss Stewart, can you please help me? Somebody just told me that my perpetrator is at the park. And I'm like, Lord, send help. I don't even have an answer for her. But the only thing I could do is call someone from VIPD to find out, because they are my contacts. So what I believe we should do, we should come together, form a committee with BOC, VIPD, and the nonprofit agency that provides this type of services to victims. So we could be able to coordinate, and when we receive calls like this frantic victims, that we have answers for them.
So,
thank you,
Senator, we get them more often. I would say at least once a week, or if not once every other week, we getting calls in our office from victims that's being harassed by perpetrators. Even at some point, we were having them calling from the prison. And when we get that, the good thing is we call the prison and let them know that they're being harassed by these inmates. And I have to say, when we let them know, they do stop it. But we even get calls from the prison, from cell phones, all over. So it's a regular basis for us that victims are complaining about perpetrators harassing them. And if not them, they send their family members to do it. If they don't do it, they send somebody else to do it for them.
Oh. Well, I sure hope that this piece of legislation is going to help that. And I'm very sorry that the parole board, who plays a very major role in this piece of legislation, is not here today to testify. When I heard about the hearing, just prior to coming here, I reached out to Mr. Howell, and he was not notified, and would have been glad to testify on the role of the parole board, what they do, and how they try to expedite this. Thank you very much for the time, Mr. Chair. I didn't know if my time was covered. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Much appreciated. Madam Clerk, you could put 7 minutes on the clock for myself, and I would begin now. Right now, okay, so Ms. Lewis, you say you get that on a regular basis. And on a regular basis, and Ms. Stewart, you say up to about October you get that. And you both have notified corrections on it only, or corrections and Attorney General's office?
Well, I'll notify corrections if they're in the prison. If they're already outside and we don't know where they are, we can't notify corrections, but we will notify the police and file a police report. And if you don't mind, Senator DeGraff, just for 1 minute for Senator Johnson, because he wasn't here, I did speak to that the parole board has been really good with notifying us and having us to testify. I've testified so much, the whole parole board know me, with the victims and sending in statements. So out of all of the system, the parole board for us have worked the best in terms of bringing the victims on board and hearing from them. So I'm the one to give kudos to the parole board.
Okay, good. Ms. Stewart, when you notify, who do you notify or have notified on a regular basis, would you say?
I notify VIPD.
VIPD, okay. So the Assistant Director Hansen, when it comes to right now as it stands, every prisoner that leaves the facility who have been involved in a crime against person, a rape or a robbery, is there any notification to anyone that they are being released?
No, no, Senator.
Okay.
What we do, we get the notification from the court as to when the sentence will be up. If Classification Act gives us documentation letting us know that sentence has been served, the persons are released.
Okay.
But again, this is not something hard that we would have to do. Again, our protocols for release just need to be changed, and we have the ability to do that in-house. That's nothing that we need to get permission to do. So we can do this almost immediately.
Okay, how much would it cost?
For us to institute a notifying system?
Correct, immediately.
It would not cost us anything. We would just have to add the procedure to our release procedures.
Okay, would it be fair to say at the close of this meeting today it will be implemented?
Well, I can say that I will notify. I will let all parties involved know that we are now doing this, and we would have to exchange information in order to be able to do so. So it can be directed specifically to who it needs to go to. As the Attorney General stated, there is a sub-department within her department that handles this. So we would have to exchange numbers, email addresses for all media. So that's what it would take to do.
Okay, would that cost anything?
No, not on our end. It will not. It wouldn't cost anything on our end to do that.
Attorney General, would that cost anything for that collaboration, or with the unit? I think you said Ms. Bradford is over. Would that cost anything, or need additional manpower for?
Well, as I indicated, the Victim Services Unit, which is a unit of one, Ms. Brathwaite, does need more victim advocates. We have none on St. Croix, and so we need. So that's it. That's different, but to answer your question though, no, it would not cost us anything to get this information and receive this information. In fact, it would be helpful, very, very helpful.
Okay, good. Now, also, is there any collaboration with the district court? Because we have residents who are perpetrators who are tried through the district court and sometimes sent out to the federal facilities. And if they are released or released early or so, along the same lines of crimes against these victims, how are they a part of that federal system that you're speaking of? Where they are notified, the victims are notified upon their release, but then there is no connection to notifying either the Attorney General's office or the victims on the local end. Could that also be a collaboration in the meantime until we get all these things in place?
Sure.
Senator, from the federal level, our victims have been notified through VIN, and that's what makes that system work. I don't know how it works with all other local agencies, but on the federal level, it definitely works. As long as our victim's perpetrator is tried on the federal level, we have access to the information.
Right. So I was just saying with Attorney General, it should at least be where that process is making you aware that these individuals have been released.
Yeah, I could look into that.
Okay.
I mean, I can certainly look into that.
Yeah, some type of collaboration.
Also,
okay, good.
Until we can get our own, that's also. But we should have that collaboration established at this point too. So we'll see if that's doable.
Okay, good. And I would just like to wrap up by saying I thank the bill sponsor of this bill. I think this is very important. And the bill sponsor, no, I don't mince when I say I vote yes. So regardless of what, everybody gonna know I vote yes from way beforehand, because it's much needed. Because again, the victim And as Senator Francis mentioned, as a police officer, it has happened to me, it has happened to him. We've seen this here. So again, you know, people might think twice maybe because you are a police officer, but again, you know, at any time, any one of us can become a victim. So I'm going to turn it over now to, yeah, my time, I don't need any more time. So right now, to the bill sponsor, Senator Donald Fred Gregory, you're recognized for your 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Excuse me 1 second, Senator. Hold it, Senator. Yes, Attorney General.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to ask, before going to the bill sponsor, if I can just make one comment on the amendment that I think might have been an oversight. I'm not sure.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure you may.
With respect to the amendment, it did, you know, graciously address some of our concerns with respect to placing it where, with the Bureau of Corrections, with us connecting. However, on the one section, section 2, it still has the Department of Justice shall promulgate the rules and regulations with the, as far as the functioning of the programs. So since it has been amended to place the responsibility of reporting on the Bureau of Corrections, that section will also need to be amended. Instead of saying the Department of Justice, it would be the Bureau of Corrections. So I just wanted to raise that so that it will be consistent. So it seemed like it might have been an oversight. So I wanted to raise that.
Okay, thank you for raising that prior to the Senator Donald Fred Gregory. Now she could tie in everything. Senator Fred Gregory, your time is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the testifiers. And of course, what we're discussing today is in fact a measure or a action, I think is more action than legislation that should have occurred a long time ago. And I wish to remind those of us who are responsible for matters of this nature that we don't always have to wait for legislation to do the right thing. I continue to hear the conversation around Act number 7519, and Act 7519 is specifically related to the Territorial Board of Parole notifying victims when an inmate is paroled. I want to make myself clear that this legislation that we are discussing, or the amendment that we are discussing today, is tied to pre-trial and post-trial of inmates. It is not tied necessarily to paroled individuals. So that's important for us to note. So I don't want us to get mixed up with our conversation. We already have legislation that's tied to parolees. So I also want to touch on the VINE program discussion. So of course there is recommendation coming from the Office of the Attorney General indicating that the legislation should include the VINE system. The VINE system is just that, a system. And as leaders, it is important for us to understand that policy drives system. The system don't drive the policy. So part of the comment that the Attorney General made earlier around the amendment, while I agree with her that we need to make that change also needs to include the Office of the Attorney General. This legislation requires collaboration between the courts, the Attorney General's office, and the Bureau of Corrections. And nothing prevents this government, the executive branch of this government, from instituting or putting in place the VINE system. It doesn't require legislation for the government of the Virgin Islands to implement the VINE system. We have to have this discussion today for the VINE system to be implemented in this territory, because I see that the Bureau of Corrections is indicating we strongly recommend that the Virgin Islands adopt the nationwide victim information and notification. The central government, the executive branch, can do that tomorrow if they choose. So legislation is not required for us to do that. So we should not be including any specific system name in our laws, because when we are no longer here and there's a future Virgin Islands, we don't need to go back and amend when they change it to another name. So I am not in favor of any of the amendments recommended under anything that references the Vine system. It is whatever system this government chooses to implement in the interim and in the future. Now, let me ask a question around how many, I'm trying to establish, because, you know, a lot of times we like to compare ourselves with the national level. And I'm trying to understand, for the most part, how many individuals are released in this territory. Just a wrong figure. You probably don't have that on you. This is for the Bureau of Corrections. Monthly on pre-trial or post-trial release. How many individuals in this territory are released on a monthly basis, on average?
If you give me a minute, Senator, I can get that information. I can get an estimate for you.
Okay, good. And that's an important question that needs to be answered. And I'm asking that question because we cannot look at ourselves as a state. We are 100,000 people going south. Based on our last census, some 87,000 people. So we cannot get ourselves caught up with what's happening on a national level. If this is something that we can implement, and then we have the conversation with regards to the Vine, then we do that. But we should not let the perfect be the enemy of the good when it comes to this legislation and what needs to happen. At the end of the day, our responsibility, again, and I can't say it enough, is to protect the individuals within our community. And I do agree that there was discussion around, some of my colleagues talked about the challenges around what they've experienced with victims, not victims, no, perpetrators, if you will, or alleged perpetrators being released and they're not aware. And, you know, they served in law enforcement, the Department of Justice, the Attorney General's office. Those attorneys worked on the case. So we need to just wrap it up nicely in a bow. So all individuals can be notified. We just have to collaborate between DOJ, BOC, and our judicial system. We are way too small for us to be having a contemplation around whether or not this could work based on the size and of our territory. Colleagues, I am going to ask, I'm asking you again for your support on this measure. I think I've heard overall support for the measure. Like I said earlier, the basic notification previously was only for domestic violence. We are expanding this. It is important that individuals are aware when their alleged or perpetrators are released from prison. And I think we brought up, I think the chair brought up clemency. And I agree that that needs to be included. People, victims need to know. They need to know so we can prepare ourselves mentally, emotionally, etc., for whatever, for the release of their perpetrators or alleged perpetrators. It's just an important component that needs to occur in this territory at this time. So we need to get on board. We need to get on board, and we cannot allow funding to stand in the way of us moving this legislation forward. And I'm certain that we heard a few evenings ago that funding is not an issue. So let's make this happen. Let us make this happen in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Crime is on the rise. We have a responsibility to ensure that we reduce crime, yes, but we also have a responsibility to ensure that those that are impacted by crime in the U.S. Virgin Islands are in fact safe and secure and aware of what's happening with them. We need to be hyper aware in our community. So my time hasn't been called.
Excuse me, Senator?
I will ask, you can respond. I will ask that my colleagues to support this measure once again, and all those who are not here today, who are not on the committee, once it moves to the Rules Committee, likewise. I believe that Assistant Director Hansen had, do you have the information, Assistant Director Hansen?
I'm sorry, Senator. We do have the numbers for you. It's between 30 and 40 inmates.
So here it is, right? I'm glad I got the information. So we having, let's go on a high number. We having a conversation about funding around 40 people on a monthly basis, on average. Actually, I didn't have the average. That's a high end. There's no debate. We should not be debating this issue. We are not on the national level. We are a small fish in a big pond. And we need to operate as such when it comes to this particular issue. So the Bureau of Corrections and the Department of Justice and our judicial system need to all collaborate so we could make this work in the interim. If we want to put a system in place for 40 people, that's on us. But this legislation does not need any funding tied to it. We need to get to action on this issue. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time.
May I have a question, Mr. Chair? I have a question.
It doesn't quite. You can make a comment. You can make a comment if you will.
Oh, I wasn't sure when he said when Mr. Hansen said 40, if it's per month or 40 per year. You mean 40 per month, an average?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Attorney General. It's 40 per month.
Okay.
That's on average.
Okay.
30 to 40 per month.
Per month?
Yes, per month.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I have a comment, if I can.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Hansen.
Okay, I believe that, Attorney General, you stated that in place of the Department of Justice, the Bureau of Corrections will be named as the agency that will be responsible for notification, right?
Well, that is under the amendment. The amendment that was presented this morning specifically changes from Department of Justice to the Bureau of Corrections as the agency responsible for notification. So I was indicating that they will also need to be responsible for the rules and regulations of that program of notification as well.
Okay, and
always in conjunction with the Department of, in notifying, Department of Justice.
Okay, so of course, I'd like to make it clear that our understanding of notifications, we're going to be notifying the agencies are in concert with the agencies that need the information, not the victim. Just making that clear, because we don't collect the resources in order to do that. So we are more than willing to be able to notify all the agencies and all the individuals within these agencies, but we cannot be responsible for notifying the victims. We don't collect that information.
Okay. It's just according to this to the amendment. I'm just reading as far as the terms.
Understood.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, I just have a point.
Just one more comment, please, sir.
Okay, go ahead, Attorney General.
Just one more comment with respect to the vine. I just wanted to, the vine actually appears in section 1B1 of bill number 340141. So that is actually where, and I really appreciate that, because that is when I first became aware of what Vine was. I'd never heard of it before, and I think it is a brilliant program, but it's because it actually appeared in the bill. And so the amendment takes out that section as not being legislated. And I think that Senator Gregory is correct in that it doesn't have to be legislated for us to implement the system. But that is just where I had gotten it from and why it was raised, and we looked into it and we realized that that would be a great system to use. So I just wanted to clarify that as well.
Okay, thank you, Senator Fred Gregory. You're recognized for your point of information.
I just heard the comment from the Bureau of Corrections. And we've worked very closely with the Bureau on this matter. And again, I want to be clear. And you know, this conversation that we're having, like, it's starting to become circular. It's starting to become a circular conversation, because I think what we're starting to run from, because that's what I'm hearing now, is who's responsible? The Attorney General Office, the Bureau of Correction, and the judicial system. All of the entities are responsible.
Yes.
Okay? And
Agreed.
whomever, whatever entity is to provide the information should be fed up to that entity. So the Bureau of Corrections, you know when Donna is being released for pretrial.
Agreed.
Let's just talk about pretrial alone. So that information should be fed up to you. But you all have to collaborate to figure out what that system is going to look like. I said it earlier. Policies drive the system. The system does not drive the policy. So work together, put your system together, and then you'll have a process. It's just that simple. But again, we have to find the time. It has to be important to us as leaders to make it happen. It's just that simple. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, welcome, Senator Fred Gregory. Testifiers, thank you very much for the all the information that you provided to us this morning in regards to this matter. At this time, I think we've exhausted our line of questioning. Do I hear a motion at this time? Colleagues?
Amendment?
Senator Francis, you're recognized for amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and colleagues, I offer amendment number 34-449 on behalf of the bill sponsor, Senator Donna Fred Gregory. Bill number 34-0141 is amended in section 1 as follows. A, page 2, line 21, by striking Department of Justice and inserting the Bureau of Corrections. B, line 3, page 3, line 3, by striking paragraph 1 in its entirety and renumbering the remaining paragraphs accordingly, and C, by designating subsection E as subsection F, and by adding a new subsection E that reads as follows. E, when a defendant is found guilty of a crime of violence or an offense involving crime against the person, and a condition of the sentence restricts the defendant's ability to have contact with the victim, that condition must be included in the order, and the clerk of the court or the persons designated by the court shall provide a written copy of that order to the victim not later than 48 hours after its entry. D, by adding an appropriately numbered section that reads as follows. Section blank, Title 5, Virgin Islands Code, Chapter 407, Section 4606 is amended as follows. A, in subsection C, by striking 24 hours and inserting 48. B, by redesignating section C as subsection D and adding a new subsection C that reads as follows. C, the notification must include the parolee's full name, including any known nicknames, the parolee's release date, and the location where the parolee will be released. The parole board shall notify the victim either by phone call, by email, or by serving the victim by a person authorized to serve summons and complaints in the territory. I so move.
Second.
Yes, Amendment 34-449 has been properly moved by Senator Francis and seconded by Senator DeGraff, and I believe it was Senator Javon James. Hearing no objections, so ordered.
Motion.
Senator Francis, you're recognized for your motion. Senator Francis, you're recognized for your motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and colleagues, I move that Bill number 34-0141, an act amending Title 34 Virgin Islands Code, Chapter 8, to require the Virgin Islands Attorney General's Office to expeditiously notify victims of crime against persons of the release of their alleged perpetrator as amended be favorably approved by the Committee of Homeland Security, Public Safety, and Justice and sent to the Rules Committee for further vetting. I so move.
Second.
Second by Senator James.
All right, bill number 34, that's 0141, has been properly moved by Senator Francis and seconded by Senator James and Senator DeGraff. Roll call on bill 34, that's 0141.
Senator Stephen D. Payne Sr.,
Yes.
Senator Payne Sr., yes. Senator Dwayne M. DeGraff, yes. Senator DeGraff, yes. Senator Kenneth L. Gittens, absent. Senator Novell E. Francis Jr.,
Yeah.
Senator Francis Ye, Senator Javon E. James Sr.,
Yes.
Senator James Sr., yes. Senator Alma Frances Heiliger,
Yes.
Senator Frances Heiliger, yes. Senator Franklin D. Johnson,
Yeah.
Senator Johnson, yes. Mr. Chair, we have a total of 6 yeas.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Bill number 34, that's 0141, an act amending Title 34 Virgin Islands Code, Chapter 8, to require the Virgin Islands Attorney General's Office to expeditiously notify victims of crimes against the person of the release of the alleged perpetrator, as amended, has been favorably voted on in this committee and will be forwarded to the Committee of Rules and Judiciary for further consideration. Senator Fred Gregory, you're recognized for your point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank my colleagues, but most importantly, I would like to thank the testifiers that came today to discuss this very important matter. What's equally important is that we heard a number of recommendations here today, and the measure has been moved to the Rules Committee, and we are also prepared. I will work with my colleagues to bring the additional amendments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Fred Gregory. Testifiers, at this time, I gave each of you 30 seconds to wrap up, beginning with Ms. Anya Stewart.
Good afternoon, everyone. And again, I am in full support of this bill, and I would really like to see it get in effect so we could better serve our clients. And you don't have to be a DV client or sexual assault client, but anyone that walks through our doors, we are there to assist them in whatever way we can. And if we have to place a phone call just to find out what's happening, we will do as well. And I want to thank Clemma for always being supportive of our cause. I have to say our cause because we are in this together. And I pray for more blessings and everyone who made this a success. And I really thank you all for inviting us and your inputs. And this bill is very important to our victims and to anyone. As Senator Francis said, he was confronted, and I know it could happen to any one of us. So let's put pen and paper and our ideas and everything together so we can make it work. We can if we partner with each other. So continue to do our best in every way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stewart. And for the Bureau of Corrections, Assistant Director Hansen, or Mr. Carwood.
Good afternoon, Assistant Director Hansen here. First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you for everyone on the panel, everyone in the that actually testified and spoke their truth today. I do agree that this is something that should have been done. I am glad that we're now revisiting it to make sure that it is done. And I can vow that the Bureau of Corrections will do everything in its power to assist to make sure that this is done appropriately. Thanks again.
All right, thank you very much. And now we'll go on to Ms. Clemma Lewis. You're recognized.
Good afternoon again. Thank you, Senator Payne. Thank you, Senator Fred Gregory, and thank you, all the senators. Most importantly, thank you, my colleague Anya. We do everything together. So you can trust whatever's done on St. Thomas will be done on St. Croix. We don't do this St. Croix versus St. Thomas. We do everything together. Mr. Hansen, I haven't met you, but I hope when you put it in place, you include the victim advocacy groups as well, not just the Department of Justice. Another one, I will send you all my personal information you need just so that we can get it. I think we need to leave here understanding crime is on the rise. Our community is not changing. The only thing going to change what happened in the community is us. Victim notification is critical. People are afraid to talk. They're afraid that if they say something, it's going to be retaliation. We need to get this bill out. The bill is important for all of us, victims and our safety as well. So I am pleading and asking all the senators to open your spirit, your soul, and your heart and support a bill that's about saving lives for us as well as yourself and our community. Thank you again for the invitation, and everybody have a good weekend. And don't forget to pray and be safe. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Lewis. And last but definitely not least, Honorable Denise George, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. And I just want to say thank you again to everyone here. Thank you for the bill sponsor for coming up with this measure, a measure that definitely is needed. The Department of Justice, me under the Attorney General's office, our victims and witnesses are the most important, they are utmost importance to all of us and in this community. It's indicated that there are like 480, approximately an average of 480 releases that happen within the year based on the records. That's a lot of people in this small community. And so we have a lot of victims that we have to be notified in advance so that they can be, their safety and security can be assured. That is of utmost importance. So I really support wholeheartedly this measure. I believe that the best thing that we could do is get into the 21st century. Let's get the most efficient and effective way to notify victims and link everyone together. And that's why I so support the VINE program that I became to know it because of this bill that has come up. And it is great. And I hope that we can get this to link everyone together and to link it with the courts, link it with the stakeholders. And then, of course, so that the victims can be notified efficiently and effectively. And yes, there's a cost. That cost is so minimal compared to what the value of it is. You're talking about maybe 100,000 reoccurring each year. And this can actually save the lives, assure the security and safety of just hundreds and thousands of people as we go year and year and year. So it is really a small pittance. And so I look forward to rolling on this and starting even before getting the VINE program or anything, starting working with Bureau of Corrections in implementing what we could do from day one in getting our victims notified, getting information so we could start moving and really protecting our victims. So thank you again very much, and everybody just have a blessed weekend.
Eloquently stated, Attorney General. And as I said in my opening remarks, better together always. Testifiers, before you released Ms. Brathwaite, I want to thank you very much for sticking in with us for the entire day, even though we had technical difficulties with bringing you up on the mic. I want to thank you, and I'm sure your supervisor is going to treat you to lunch today because of that. You have the best supervisor in the world, so I know it's going to happen, all right? So testifiers, you all are released officially from the meeting today. Thank you very much for your input. Truly appreciate it. Enjoy your weekend. And
Thank you, Senator.
Alrighty. And before we close, I would like to say that we don't have any winners. No one couldn't figure out
Point
the
of
riddle
information.
today. Someone said something?
Point of information when you finish, Mr. Chair.
Well, okay. We didn't have any. You want to go now, Senator Francis? Senator Francis, you're free. Senator Francis, I think you may have frozen up for a second there. Okay, as soon as you get back online, let me know, Senator Francis, because I think we kind of lost you over here. Like I said, we didn't have any winners.
Frozen at this time.
Oh, okay, apparently you just came up. You want to go at this time? Before I continue? Senator Francis? You want to go at this time?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to quickly explain to the public the Block 2 and the fact that we had Bill 34-0142, an act amending the Virgin Islands Code Title 20, Chapter 45 by adding a subchapter 2 to provide for an automatic license plate reader system as a crime fighting tool throughout the Virgin Islands, and amending Title 3, Chapter 33, Section 881 relating to the police records to exclude captured plate data from automatic plate reader system. And again, another critical crime fighting tool for the Virgin Islands Police Department. The commissioner, obviously, with the spate of crime that's occurring, wasn't available today in regards to this, but this is a very important measure. As the manpower in the Virgin Islands Police Department seem to continue to dwindle, it's critical that they resort to surveillance cameras, CCTV, license plate readers to help them in their crime fighting effort. And, you know, I've been at this since the 31st legislature in ensuring that we have functional surveillance cameras to assist them in their crime fighting effort. And I'll continue to beat the drum on this particular issue because it's critical that we're able to, again, support them from this legislative body. But they too have a responsibility to make sure that they're adhering to the execution of getting our surveillance cameras up and running so that we could be able to capture and arrest some of these perpetrators that continue to wreak havoc in our community. So we will be hearing from them in the next Committee of Homeland Security, Justice, and Public Safety hearing. So I just wanted the public to be aware of the reason why this bill was taken off of today's agenda. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the time.
You're welcome for your passionate words, Senator Francis. And we definitely look forward to hearing your bill at our next committee meeting. I was talking about the riddle that went out this morning as far as winners. Well, I was pulling your legs for real, man. We do have a winner. We have actually two winners from each district. And from the St. Croix district, we have Miss Risa Bailey. She's the winner from St. Croix. And from the district of St. Thomas St. John, our winner is our Sergeant at Arms, Delvin Fleming, aka the Steel Warrior. However, in the St. Thomas St. John district, the Steel Warrior has decided that he would like to give his prize to someone else in central staff. So the first person in the St. Thomas St. John district that texts their full name to 340-474-9104, you will receive the prize today from the St. Thomas St. John district. Thank you, central staff, for participating in your special day as decreed by your at-large senator. This is officially the Legislature Central Staff Employees Day. On behalf of my entire staff, enjoy the rest of your day to the fullest. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, media. Thank you, Sergeant at Arms. Thank you, Steel Warrior Journal, and to my superific staff. Thank you for what you do and what you did towards making this committee meeting a successful one as usual. God bless you all and have a super weekend. The meeting of Homeland Security, Justice, and Public Safety, this meeting is hereby adjourned.